Ooh, we're a little bit later than usual, but only by 2 minutes. Hello, everybody. Still getting installed over here. It's freaking boiling. Give me just a second, and then we'll get the show on the road. Hello, Drunken Noodle. I don't think I've seen you here before. Love to have you here. Sir Rizzle. Welcome, welcome. McFal, Sergio, Sheila. Lovely to have you all here. Hello, Daniel. All right, hold on. We're nearly there. Hello, Vikram. Okay, let's do this. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. It's a bit darker than usual, huh? This is my natural lighting. Let's switch things on up. Let's get this thing on. Oh, of course, doesn't work. Oh, it's going good, Sergio. It's going good, even though like all my like what the hell's happening? A lot of stuff is just unreachable. What do you mean? Oh god. Oh well. Does this work? No. I think the heat is just killing like all my tech, you know, which understandable. Well, okay. We'll just have to do it this way then. I don't care. Got the camera on. Got mics working and all that kind of stuff, so that's all we care about really, huh? Hello, A. But yeah, happy birthday, Sergio. Sorry, don't know. Wait, am I mixing it up? Fuck, it was you that was your birthday, right? Oh, yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, congratulations. Hope you had a nice day. I'm not going to reveal anything that you did as private for our community to know. so if you wanna know what happened on Sergio's birthday, then feel free to join the community. Oh my god, sales pitch of the year, let's go. I'm doing good, eh? Thank you for joining. Yeah, it's been pretty warm. I can't really lie. Like today was a difficult day just in terms of like staying motivated, you know? Just like fucking I mean, I got like a fan next to me right there, which is helping, but it's also just like it's sticky, little stuff going on. I don't like it. But hey, enough about that. Been having a lot of good conversations. So we there's a lot of stuff going on with the course, right? So as we all know, like let me give you like a quick weekly update. So we're currently ramping up for 5 people to work on the course. So we're gonna do an introduction to lighting. Let's see, introduction to lighting. We're going to be talking about post-processing. I'm writing about BBR theory, and then I recently also we're getting to the end of an art fundamental lesson about both color theory and God, there's so much happening that I can barely keep track myself. Let's have a quick glance, shall we? What was the other one? God. Oh yeah, reference gathering. That was the one that I was writing about this week. That's fun. Because I felt there was like so much has changed, weirdly enough, in the realms of like reference gathering. Like the top level information is still there, right? But like how you gather references, especially in the age of AI and all that kind of stuff, like how you actually go about like filtering what is good, what is bad, what is usable, all that kind of stuff. Why I highlighted a bunch of stuff there. Yeah, making some good progress there. And then on Friday, we have our workshop with Jack Shergold, who is currently working with us at Playgrounds. He's going to be talking about his experiences going into the industry. He was working in VFX before, made the switch to games, and he's also going to be talking about like portfolio, CV tips, and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I want to highlight this is because it is massive shout out to Evelyn, but it's the first one that is actually free for all of our members in our community. So that's a huge deal. Evelyn basically wanted to do it this way because she felt that like, hey, look, like if we're gonna swing the idea of having like these workshops that are really helpful to people, then having one about like getting into the games industry and like upping up your game on CVs and portfolio and all that kind of stuff is the best way to do so. So yeah, if you want to hop in, you can find it in the event tab on our Discord. That has like all the information, but it is going to be free for all of our community members. So you don't have to be a workshop member. This is going to be free for all. So yeah, yeah, but then we'll still do like the regular thing with like the recording. We'll probably give that like a little bit of early access to like people that that are supporting us on the workshop end. So there will still be like an early access period there. But yeah, that out the way. Prepping for Gamescom. So Gamescom is happening next week. I'm kind of been late on it. So I started reaching out to like a bunch of people to meet up. So yeah, I'm meeting up with like a bunch of my old friends from Ubisoft. So they're gonna be there as well. That's gonna be fun. Then obviously I'm meeting up with the co-host of the game artist meetup that we're co-organizing with the three of us. And then we're kind of getting some like last minute logistics in order, like getting all the stuff to the location and stuff. So that is going to be awesome. And then, yeah, meeting up with a bunch of people. That's going to be cool too. So if you are there, then yeah, give me a shout. I would love to meet up with you. If you know people that are going, like feel free to send them my LinkedIn profile or something like that so that I can get into contact. Especially if they're artists. Like I'm always open to meet new artists. So yeah. If you're going, or if you know someone else that's going, feel free to share. Feel free to share that in the chat. Would love to meet you all. Born on the same day? Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember from last year. So yeah, congrats, almost same birthday, buddy. But yeah, so that's gonna be good. Got a whole bunch of stuff. Honestly, the last thing that I needed to do, because my phone is dying on me, is I needed to get like a battery pack. Or like yeah, just like an extra battery basically. Because otherwise my phone can barely last a day now. Like when I'm gonna be using it fully, like it's only lasting me like a couple of hours. It's getting ridiculous, but I refuse to buy a new one. But yeah. So that's happening. Really excited. That also means that next week we won't have Whip Wednesday. So unfortunately, I'll be out for that week. But I do have the week after off. So we can kind of chill out and maybe do like a longer session or something like that. That would be cool. Yeah, but I'm honestly really excited about just going to Gamescom, especially the indie arena. Like they have a full floor that is basically only indie games. And I just love going there for like the vibes and like seeing all people just like making their own games and yeah, like really connecting with like on the other indie developers. Yeah, so I'm really keen to check all that out. Yeah, I don't tend to look up at games too much. One game that I really liked from last year, which I'm assuming is going to be this year as well, is TVKK. Which is a very appetizing title for... It's basically a game where we sit in like a giant cannon and you defend Earth, right? And then you have to kind of do like things inside of your cannon because it's not only a cannon, it's like your habitat as well. So yeah, I'm hoping to see them again. Maybe play it a little bit, even though I want to get spoiled. I just want to play the game, you know? But I'm looking forward to that. It also has like a stereotypical German name. So I think it's Planetenverteidigung Kanonenkommandant or something like that. It's like just like one long name. I think the Steam title is even just like clipped off because it's such a long title. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. And yeah, I think the rest of our time is just gonna be looking at merch, looking at cool stuff that we can find. and buy, and maybe some cool prints or something like that. And then, yeah, it's easy to say. Yeah, it rolls off the tongue, you know. It's whenever I, yeah, exactly. Whenever I have to say this to people, I'm like, oh, I'm really excited for a game called PvKK. And they're like, wow, that's a shitty name. And then it's like, okay, but the full name is like that. And they're like, what the fuck? What did you just say? Like, huh? It's kind of fun just by itself. Yeah, but what else? Yeah, mostly excited for the indie stuff and then all the merch, honestly. Like seeing like all the goodies, what we can buy. I think that's gonna be cool. Is anyone else in the chat going to Gamescom? Be curious. Hello, Veer. Hello. How are you doing? Just a normal German word. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course you are, Lily. Sorry, I missed you there. How are you doing? What are you most excited for? Hello, Babu. Hello. How are you doing? Welcome. We're for people that are just hopping in, we're gonna get started in a little bit to talk about basically this is like my weekly session where I go through our community, like a community of artists, and they basically put their work forward, and then I can give them feedback on what they want. So yeah, we're gonna be diving into that in a little bit. We got a packed session, so that's gonna be good. I think we have 14 people for today, and I didn't complete my my preparations either, so we're gonna do a lot of stuff on the fly today, which is all right. Yeah, I think I got halfway through, which is actually not ideal, but hey. Doing a mentorship with a buddy and had my first lesson a few days ago. Learned a ton about PBR. Hell yeah. Leveling up your skills. Always awesome to see. Sergey was saying, I wish I was. Yeah, so for all the people that do want to go to Gamescom, which I think you should, it is probably my recommendation to go to like an event. It is not only it's not only dev related though, it is more like a commercial thing. But I really recommend going because it is such like an awesome event. Like I think the word awesome is like specifically I would describe like Gamescom like that, because there's so many people, so many cool games that you can just experience. You get to see like so many people in their element. It is amazing. Mikhail is going maybe on a Wednesday. Oh yeah. Yeah, so Wednesday is like a special day where if you buy a special ticket, then you get in and you're only sharing the show floor with like devs or people that bought that special ticket, which is really cool. But yeah, I'm looking forward to, like that's honestly the day that I enjoy the most, because everything is like pretty quiet, and then from Thursday it begins ramping up. Friday becomes like really hectic, and then Saturday and Sunday are just like impossible. Like a recommendation, if you want to go next year, do not plan to stay on like Saturday and Sunday, even though that's usually the most convenient days, because it is packed. Like there's a shit ton of people there. So if you can do it on like Thursday and Friday, that's ideal. Yeah, what are you looking forward to, Lily? Do you have like any special plans? I don't know if this is the first time going. You've been there before? Oh, and Babu was supposed to go, but we have crunch at work. No! Oh, sorry to hear that, Babu. Yeah. Hopefully next year then. It'll be awesome. You gotta check out some events here in London. Don't know what's going on. Yeah, I feel like, so when we lived in Cambridge, right? I used to go to like London for like a bunch of events. Well, a bunch of events, like a decent amount of events. But I feels like that most of the people, or like most of the events are no longer there. One of my favorite events actually was called EGX Rest, which was like a game conference but purely for indie developers. And it was so cool because obviously you get to talk to the people behind the games and all that kind of stuff. You get to meet them and you get to like demo the game live and like see how it works. But that's no longer a thing, which is it's kind of unfortunate because that was probably my favorite event to go to in London. Other than EGX, I don't think there's too much here. Yeah. I mean, there are definitely events. There's a lot of events in London, but it's like it kind of depends on what you want out of it, right? Because there's a lot of probably smaller events. And then EGX is more like the commercial thing, right? So probably even more commercial. Yeah, EGX is like purely commercial, where like Gamescom, the interesting thing about it is that you have DevCom first and then Gamescom straight afterwards. And then you have this like really interesting mix of like developers and the commercial people. But yeah, there's a good blend there where like EGX is mostly just people from the public, right? Because most of the business happens in Cologne anyway, from what I can tell. Excited to meet you all and the events you guys are hosting. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. We have our final amount of people. So we are gonna be, well, currently we have 72 people that are planned to come to like our first games artist meetup, which is like freaking exciting. So we're kind of doing like the last bits of planning on that. Then we're gonna see how that goes. I'm really excited. We've got like a whole bunch of, I mean, I showed it last time. We have like all the little badges from Beyond Extent that we're gonna be handing out at the event. That's gonna be cool. And there's gonna be like a collection of these, which I'm just gonna hand out at the event. We've got like a whole bunch of like sponsors that decided to sponsor us with like merch and all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be cool. Exactly, the shot coasters. Yeah. And what is also gonna be cool is that there's gonna be a bunch of people. So for example, the person who does like all the edits for the workshop, we're actually going to be meeting up with her as well. She's coming to the event too. So that's going to be exciting. It's the first time meeting her, so it's going to be really cool to like link up. Side effects merch. Yep. Yeah. 26 kilograms of side effects merch, which is, I wish it was a lie, but they literally send us like 26 kilograms of merch. So it's gonna be crazy. Is NVIDIA a sponsor? Yeah, NVIDIA Studio is a sponsor. So they were really kind enough to like sponsor us. They're taking care of the location and then also a big batch of people as well. So that's their portion that they're sponsoring, which is amazing. And the way that we kind of divided up was that Side Effects is sponsoring like all the food, because there's going to be like snacks and drinks and all that kind of stuff is all going to be provided. So we don't really want to worry about like anything at the event. We just want to be able to enjoy the event itself. Oh no, now I'm even more sad that I don't go. I will miss the meetup. It's highly likely. It's highly likely that that we'll do it next year. I mean, I don't want to speak for the other co-host, and we'll need to see how it goes, but because I don't know, there's such an interest in the people that we're co-hosting with. They're so eager for it too. I feel like there is a high chance of us doing it next year as well. Atakan, welcome. What do you think about people slicing watermelons on their phones instead of playing computer games they've worked so hard for? Makes me sad. Huh? I have no clue what you're talking about. What event is this? So this is the Games Artist Meetup. So I'll link into the chat for all of you. This is an event that I'm co-hosting with two of my friends. And Beyond Extent is also sponsoring as well. So Beyond Extent is one of the 4 sponsors. We're taking care of an additional batch of people that wants to come into wants to come into the event. So thank you all so much. No, it's not going to be in the UK, so it's going to be in Gamescom. Yeah, he must be talking about Fruit Ninja. I was thinking about that, but then Fruit Ninja is like this old game, no? Or maybe it's like Fruit Ninja on Roblox now. Yeah. Sick lighting. Reminds me of Breaking Bad. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Volvo was reacting to like the 26 kilograms that they're sending us. Yeah, we were surprised. Because we're all sending it to one of our co-hosts, and she showed like a picture of the box. And we were all just like, what the hell? Like, that is crazy. McFound is saying, I was looking at the train tickets, and funnily enough, it's cheaper to go from Stockholm to Cologne than it is to go to Stockholm to Malmö. Oh, what? Interesting. Interesting. Fruit Ninja, my childhood. Love that game. Yeah, I've never played it. I was never into like mobile games at all. I'm also a generation behind, you know? So like anything mobile was always like, oh, why would you do this? Like if you can have like a mouse and a keyboard or a controller, you know? Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Are you talking about like the computer games that like big AAA companies work for? Or work so hard for? Be curious, man. I mean, honestly, like what is always gonna happen is that games. Yeah, this is interesting, right? Like if we look at games as like a trigger for dopamine, right? Like it is just like it is sometimes it's so easy. I'll play the same kind of games as well. So for example, Cookie Clicker, right? I love that game. What do you do in that game? It is just clicking a cookie, right? But behind it, just the psychological effects of seeing a number go up and like go up, go up, go up, go up, you know? That's it, right? And we're getting to a point where we have so many different forms of like stimuli and so many different ways of getting that dopamine that they're all just competing, right? So that's why when you hear the big companies say like, oh no, we're not competing, like Microsoft is not competing with Sony anymore. They are competing with Netflix, with TikTok, and all that kind of stuff. It's not only because of that, but it's also because there's no big new audience that is now coming up and engaging with games, right? Like the market is really saturated at this point, apart from maybe like developing markets that are still coming online. But I feel like the biggest rush we've already had, especially with the upcoming trends. Well, the now very normal trend of like mobile games and all that kind of stuff, right? Hello, Jose. Hello, Sia. Welcome. It's good to have you both here. It's about dopamine and it affects the gaming trade. Yeah, but it affects like everything, right? Like it is also the same thing. If we were to generalize it even more, it's ease of use, right? Like that is why there's probably so many more people that play on mobile games compared to console and PC and all that kind of stuff, because everyone has a mobile phone. Not everyone has like a gaming PC or like a dedicated console or something like that, right? Like it is, weirdly enough, if you think about we're gonna make a correlation between portfolios, right? Because that's also the way that I think about it, weirdly enough, is we need to remove as many hurdles that we can. And it's with really simple stuff, right? So if you, on your portfolio, if you have folders instead of your work like immediately on the front page of your portfolio, you are gonna lose a percentage of people because they have to do an extra click, right? So that's the same thing. Like, it's just lowering the barrier of entry, like forever and always. That's why Game Pass is so successful, right? Because now I don't need to go out and buy like all my games separately on all these different platforms. It's just I buy one subscription and have access to all of it, right? Like, it's lowering the barrier of entry. The only mobile games I play are PC games that have a mobile version. The shovelware type games with like premium currency and timers and stuff grosses me out. Yeah, yeah, it is the same for me. Like, I just know how predatory they are. So that's why I never engage with them necessarily. Which is like traditionally on PC, if you, let's say, like MMOs, right? Like, they have a lot of microtransactions in them as well, but they do it in a way where it's more like you don't have to, you know? Where like if you play like, I don't know if it's still like that, but like playing Candy Crush and you fail a level like 5 times in a row, that's it. Now you need to go beg for your friends to give you hearts or buy hearts, you know? Like, you're actually blocked from playing the game. I saw that this meetup is happening in Köln. If I understood the link correctly, is that at the same time as Gamescom? Yes, it is on technically the first day of Gamescom. So like after we go into Gamescom, we do our stuff, then we're gonna go straight to the event and we're gonna do like an after party. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I played a ton of mobile games and then kind of just got into consoles and never looked back. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I grew up with like consoles before games were actually playable on mobile, right? Because the graphic processing power of a mobile phone like just sucked for like a long time. Can I attend even if I don't have a ticket to Gamescom? It's outside of the venue. I might just go for the meetup. Unfortunately, we're fully booked though. So if you don't have a ticket yet, it is unlikely that we'll let you in because we do have to like pay out of pocket for people that are still coming in. So unfortunately, that also will not be possible. Thinking. Send me a DM. Like if you're in our community, Jose, send me a DM or something like that to remind me of this. There might be some people that will cancel, and then we can see what we can do. But yeah, no promises though. And also, if you come from afar, like please don't. Like, we'll do more meetups in the next year, you know. Let's see. Jasmine works with you? Yeah. Yeah, we basically hang out like every year at Gamescom. So yeah, every year, well, yeah, every year we decide to meet up. Like usually we go to like a place central in Köln to drink some like nice some nice cocktails. That's usually where we end up. And we decided like, hey, why don't we organize an event and just do it all for ourselves, you know? That's basically how it began. You're in Berlin, so I could easily get a Flixbus? Yeah. UK meetup sometime, maybe? Potentially. What I also want to do with like a meetup is that I kind of want to bundle it together with something, right? So that if you come, it's not only for the event, it's also for something around the event. So let's say you're coming for the meetup, but then also for develop, right? So that we can kind of bundle things together. And unfortunately, develop has just come and gone. So that won't be possible for this year. Also, I've heard that develop I don't know. I need to talk to more people about this, but a lot of people were disappointed by Develop this year, which is kind of crazy. I don't know why. I don't know how that can be. I mean, UK has like so many developers. Like, the UK should be bustling with just like games industry events, but yeah, it doesn't feel like it. Yeah, also for all the people that are joining, feel free to ask any questions about working in the games industry, being an environment artist, or anything like that. Drunken Noodle saying it was pretty good, to be honest, just jumping in. That's completely fine. Okay, so what was your experience like then, Drunken Noodle? I mean, I would love to hear from it, right? Because if it is a good event, wait, let me ask that question differently. Like, what were the highlights for you? Because, well, yeah, see, I think that's what a lot of people said, Charlie, is that it was disappointed in a way where it's like there was not too much going on, not too many stalls, they cost too much potentially. It was just the thing that I heard from people was that in comparison to like previous years, it was always like, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't like super bad, right? Maybe I'm making it sound worse than it actually is, but it was just like, eh. I'll be there for the London meetup for sure. Super down to go around and have a great time. Yeah. The best bit, I think, was the external events. Yeah. That's usually why people go to these events anyway, right? It's like, I mean, with Gamescom, I do really enjoy Gamescom itself, just like experiencing the vibes and going for the merch and all that kind of stuff. And then you kind of just go to like after parties or like these like these like events afterwards. But yeah. Yeah, so usually the after parties is where it's at, you know. I turned up really to have a chat with numerous people, as I'm not in this industry yet, so personally got a lot out of it. Oh, okay. That's cool. And then the indie event was really great too. Oh, okay. What was the indie event? Was it just like a bunch of like indie developers coming together? Or like a networking event or something? Good Game Dev Club has a nice one every month. Oh, that's maybe something to tell to Veer, right? Yeah. Getting some good spots for potential like London meetups. Showcasing their games and demos. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Like, I do want to go to develop. The thing that does always scare me away is just how freaking expensive it is. If you wanna, I feel like if you want to make the most of it, you kind of have to go to all the talks and all that kind of stuff, right? Because then you're already paying this amount of money to go by train, and then you're also paying this amount of money for the hotel, and then it's like, okay, sunk cost fallacy sets in, I guess, where it's like, oh my god, now I need to pay 700 quid if you're not sponsored by the company, right? So yeah, but that's interesting. 100% agree, it's very pricey. Yeah, I guess that's where if you organize an event like we're doing it for the first time, right? What I really liked is that it really opened my eyes to the idea that you can get external funding to run an event that then takes care of like a bunch of people, right? And this might sound like really logical if you've ever thought about like the economics behind things, but it's the first time that we're actually doing it. So now it kind of opened my eyes to be like, oh, okay. So if we can leverage like the amount of people that came here and then build like a good network and then find sponsors that want to sponsor us, then we can turn that into potentially more events. And it's just, yeah. It's interesting that I'm getting into, I feel like I'm exploring like a new world that I had like no real clue about, but now we're doing it, which is cool. Can I ask, how did you get funding for something like that? Just good connections? Yeah, basically, that's what it comes down to. And honestly, like the connections from my side, they weren't really that helpful anyway. So we have the sponsors that we have are NVIDIA Studio, which Jasmine has really good connections to. Then Beyond Extent, that's we're sponsoring the event as well, right? So that's like my involvement in that. I'm also taking care of like all the branding and all the printing. Well, myself and my partner are taking care of like the branding and the design and like all the posters and all that kind of stuff. And then we have Leia's company, who's also sponsoring us as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of like buy-in there already because we are all like industry veterans with like a lot of years behind us, right? So there's some trust that we get from that from the get-go. And obviously, like if this event does well, then we could potentially then turn that into like, hey, look at this. This is what we organized, you know? And then kind of use that as leverage again, potentially. But with anything, it's really just asking, right? Because I think anyone can ask. And if you make like well, I guess pitching is a better way of saying it. You don't just like ask like, hey, can I get some money? You kind of have to pitch the idea and kind of have like a budget already thought out and all that kind of stuff, right? Anuradha? Sorry if I mispronounced that, but you're asking a question. So what is the best pathway, the steps to learn to actually become a good environment artist? I mean, start with the basics, right? Modeling comes first. Once you get modeling done, get into texturing, learn how to bake. And you kind of want to keep it like super simple in the beginning. You kind of want to condense it to one small prop and just you get used to it step by step. You don't want to go like, hey, I want to create a world, so I'm going to create a world. That's not how it's going to work. You have to take it step by step. Like try to isolate the skills that you think you're going to need to learn and then spend time on that. And then if you think that you're decent at it, move on to the next thing and try to like cluster them that way. Yeah, the best pathway, I don't know if that made sense, or if you're more thinking about like, hey, do I go to school, or do I do a mentorship, or do I do this? I don't know if that makes sense. If it was that easy. Well, I think to a certain degree, like if you make a good pitch, like there is like funding available for this kind of stuff, right? I think a lot of it, what it comes down to is how trustworthy you are, right? So the longer you keep doing the same thing, the more trustworthy you become in that space. I've been dedicating like the last decade to like environment art creation and then also creating resources for it as well. So that is like my weight that I add to the conversation, right? Whereas other people, they decided to spend like their time in different ways, where they build like connections working for external companies, doing freelance stuff, so they have that to throw their weight into the mix, which is interesting. So yeah, it's almost like you're doing a, how would I even say this? So there is a word that I'm blanking on right now. Dang it. Okay. But it's, yeah, an audit. So you actually do an audit on what kind of person you want to be, and then if you're making good steps to get there, right? I'm taking it from like a very broad perspective, but I hope that helps. I'm about to finish my trim sheet, which includes 4 separate 512 textures. I'm working on Substance Designer. I would be so happy if you reviewed it live when it's finished. Yeah, everyone that's a part of the community, Like, that's the only prerequisite. Anyone that's part of the community can throw up their work weekly, and then we'll have a look at it. Yeah, for a trim sheet, which includes 4 separate 512 textures, in total 2K. You do not want to have them in a single texture, though. Make sure to split them off, because otherwise you're kind of defeating the point of having like a trim sheet, right? Because a trim sheet is meant to be tileable in a horizontal direction, let's say. And if you then pack like something right next to it, then you can't tile it that way anymore. So it kind of loses that flexibility. So hello. Is there any software that you used? Is there any software used in games that you think is being left behind or phased out? Oh my god. So many, but people still use them. I mean, like the tools don't really matter, right? And this is gonna sound weird. There's not like, not all companies have like this general idea of like, hey, everyone's kind of using Macs now, so in 2027 we're gonna phase out Macs, right? Because that's what the industry is doing. There are still companies texturing assets in Photoshop. There are still games being developed right now in UDK, which is Unreal Engine 3, not even 4, 3. There's games that got released. The best example that I have for this is Warhammer Darktide. That got released in Maya Stingray. If you don't know what that is, look that up and you'll be surprised. So yeah, it's like there's no like dedicated software that is being phased out right now. I think there are general trends of like, yeah, there's an uptick in the man, I'm blanking on so many words today. There is like an uptick in how many people are switching to Blender, right? Like, and companies are kind of following suit with that, but a company is always going to be slower than it is. So there's like general trends that are happening. Same with Unreal Engine 4 is slowly being phased out compared to Unreal Engine 5, right? Because that's just a more natural thing. Hello, Hudson. Good to see you here. But yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think there's like any dedicated software using games that is being left behind or phased out. I think it's so scattered, it's all over the place that it's hard to tell. Veer is asking, wanted to get your thoughts on something. So my mentor said that baking and surfacing are the biggest hurdles for beginners getting into game art. Do you agree? And have you got other thoughts on it? Yeah. I would say if we broaden it up, like if you want to become an artist, doing anything technical is going to be your biggest hurdle, which is usually baking, right? Like baking usually comes first because that is such a crucial thing to get out the way, because that opens and unlocks like such a wide range of things that you can do. That baking is usually the first one. And then the second one, surfacing, that kind of depends on the artist. There are people that I know that love surfacing and they're really good at it. I'm not. For me, surfacing was hard because I don't care about a single prop. I care about the world, right? That's what I've been interested in. Yeah, I would say anything technical for an artist. Yeah, surfacing, I guess Veer means like texturing. That's my assumption, at least. I have used XNormal. I am too poor for Marmoset. There's still developments right now that are using XNormal. Yep. The only program that I know is not used is Endu and Dedu, because they just don't work anymore. Like those are some of the programs that I use that are no longer in use. Yeah, texturing. Makes sense. Charlie is asking, how do you network with recruiters and seniors without coming across as, do you have a job? I always worry about that, especially as a junior looking for a job. Well, so you have to switch your mindset from being transactional, because whenever, and I used to do this too, right? Because like I wanted a job at some point as well, so I get it. I get where you're coming from. But what that is always going to lead to is just a shallow conversation that is not going to be memorable for both parties. So honestly, what you have to do is you just go to them as if you're trying to make new friends. And you can kind of talk about like a bunch of professional stuff too, right? So it doesn't have to be about like, hey, what did you have for dinner yesterday? It can be about professional stuff. But don't try to go in and say like, hey, you have a job. With recruiters, it's completely different, right? Because their job is to get other people a job. So if you then say like, hey, look, this is who I am, this is my skill set, here's my portfolio. Are there any open like availabilities at the place that you're currently working for? They are used to that. That is literally their job, right? That's also why they are at those events, because they're looking for people to recruit. Yeah. There was a good thing that I saw on LinkedIn. Even if the job, like if there's like a job application, let's say you're talking to this recruiter, right? And then that recruiter's like, oh no, we don't have like jobs for an environment artist, sorry. But we do have a job for a level designer. And you happen to know a level designer, like forward them, right? Like that's a way to help out. And what that also does in the long term, it might help you out as well, because they know that like, hey, this person referred this person and they actually did really well. So, let me think about them, you know? And that is more the thing that you need to embrace, like those long-term, just like building connections, and then, you know, keep it pretty vague. You can also be like, hey, maybe you can put me in touch with like other people that, or I don't know. Yeah, other people that you know, or I would love to get to know new recruiters or new people, right? Because I think an effective way, and I've never done this myself, but I've always thought that an effective way of networking is where you go to an event and then you just like hop around, you know? You talk to people half an hour to an hour, okay, next group, and you just like introduce yourself, but you don't make it a sales pitch. You actually just like jump in to have a nice conversation. Is it good if you want to do it to sorry, is it good if you do a tutorial on what you... Oh my god, my brain is just dying here. Let me see. Where's the question again? Is it good if you do a tutorial on what you want to learn and use that knowledge for a different project? Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's totally fine. The way that I used to approach tutorials in the beginning is probably the same thing, like you just said. Like, just do a tutorial, get all the knowledge out of it. If it's not a finished thing, that's fine. Just move on. Yeah. At a certain point, like the way that I use tutorials now is I skip to the part that I need. I'll just like soak that up and then I'll just move on. But in the beginning, you have to sit through a couple of tutorials to kind of know what the broader context of it is, right? Oh, I think we already answered that question, Veer. Are people still using stuff like XNormal? Everyone just kind of moved on to Marmoset and Substance. There are still, yeah, there's still companies that use like XNormal. Just, yeah. But I mean, XNormal, that's probably going to be like a very, very, very low percentage. And I think in most part, it's just like, no, we have Marmoset and Substance, but this person is just used to doing it in, like in XNormal. That's what they're doing. Yeah. Right, let's have a seat. We're gonna get cracking on some feedback in just a minute. Do you think HLSL is good to know? If that isn't of interest to you, yes. It's never been of interest to me. So I don't know how to do any of it. So it's never been something that I had to do or had to dive into. Because whenever you ask yourself, and this is actually a good question to ask, right? Like, is X good to know? then you always need to be able to relate it to the bigger goal of like, what do I want to achieve with that, right? Excited to see some progress? Yes, let's go. Vitaly is still using Softimage? Yeah. I mean, he's probably too busy like running, like leading the project, right? I remember what the studio is called, but damn, I got a question so long it doesn't fit in the chat. Jesus. As a beginner, it feels. Oh wait, we'll get to your question in just a second, Sergey. So as a beginner, there's 2 mountains you got to get over learning game art. The technical mountain, first to reach the creative one. Yeah. Yeah, I think what happens is that a lot of people they try to climb the technical mountain to get to the creative one, but then once they climb that first mountain, they forget to get back off of it. If that makes sense. Because then everything is so constrained by like, oh my god, like this can only have this texture and this needs to be perfectly aligned with that, and then this is the way that I do my topology, and they're so carried away by the technical aspect that they just spend like a year or 2 working on that is all they know now, and they need to reverse engineer their brain to go back to the creative part again. Are we high on technicals? We might be. I've never been. Well, no, I went through the same thing, right? But then, oh my god, I'm so glad that I kind of shook it off, you know? But I think it took me a long while. Like, even after my first professional project, like, I was still like, oh my god, I can only have like 500 tries on this asset. And it's like, no one says this. Like, this is just because the project dictated that. That didn't mean that I now need to do that on my portfolio too, right? So Sergey is saying, got a question now that I work on bigger environments. I'm putting the scene together in Max and then moving it in Unreal. Okay, that is not great. What is the way to go for placing groups of assets and modular pieces in Unreal and keep them in the exact same position? What I do right now is setting the pivot properly, so when I place it in Unreal, it's exactly in the same spot as Max. You need to reverse. That is honestly, it's an awful workflow. So the way that you need to do the workflow that you're doing now, right, is you need to set the pivot on the object itself where it makes sense that you would place it naturally. So for a wall, that's usually on either end of the wall, like straight in the middle, center, basically aligned with the floor, right? As a simple example. If you do something that wants to rotate, make sure that the pivot is on the area that you want to rotate it on, right? So if you have like a curved wall, for example, you don't want to put that in the middle because then it makes it super tricky to like rotate around. Where if you put that at the end and then you can turn it around that way, that's going to be way better. But yeah, this is going to save you so much pain, even though we have to go through that pain right now. You basically need to see Max as you only do the assets, and all the world building, you just do that as soon as possible in Unreal. Because what is going to happen otherwise is you're doing twice the work, right? Because you're assembling your scene in Max and then transporting it back to Unreal, which there's 2 ways of doing it. Either you have to like completely reassemble the scene, right? Because you have to rebuild it from the individual pieces, because now they're instances of each other, which is actually really important here. Or you collapse it to a single group and then make it one big asset, but then you lose the power of optimization, right? Because those instances are no longer going to count anymore. And an instance is basically where you use the same asset multiple times. There's some optimization underneath the hood that it basically doesn't count as a new asset, but it basically reads it as like the same asset, just with a way cheaper offset, a new position, all that kind of stuff. Which is crucial if you're working on bigger environments, modular pieces, all that kind of stuff. Like set dress in Unreal as soon as possible. It's gonna save you a lot of pain. A recommendation from my end to make this part easier is get yourself a good batch exporter. Max has one, Maya has one. There's probably There's like 1,000 like plugins for like all the software as well. Get a good batch exploiter. That's gonna help you a lot. Hello, Alejandro. Gonna get started in just a minute. Sorry, let's say 3 minutes. We'll get started at 9. I've been testing out my rendering for my props using Unreal Engine. Is it a good practice or should I get Marmoset? No, totally fine. Just keep doing it in Unreal. The only thing that matters there is if they look good and if they're done in real time. That's it. And they both can handle the job. But I'm afraid to not have issues with being precise in placing building pieces in my scene. So for that, you need to use a grid. So the way that you build your modules is they need to be a multiplication of the grid, right? So always make it like 1 meter, 2 meter, 4 meter, 10 meter, so that it easily snaps to the grid and you can easily just snap those together. It makes it super easy to work with. Yeah. Did you see my question from before? I don't think so. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Well, let's see. So how do game companies look at experience from similar industries? Like augmented reality. How do game companies look at experience? Oh, I see what you mean. So we're talking about like, let's say you worked in like VR or like AR, like augmented reality for the past 5 years. There is a lot of stuff that transfers over, right? There's a lot of stuff that transfers over. I think there are going to be some concerns, right? So dependent on where you're going. So for example, for like a AAA company, if you are coming from AR because or like VR even, because you're usually so much, you're so heavily constricted by the resources that you have, you will not be able to push the quality boundaries most of the time, right? Which means that might be a side concern. But honestly, like, you're going to be modeling in the same way. Yeah, the material setup is going to be different, but there's still going to be a lot of translation. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. We work on Nana in current project, and my evaluation has feedback about add more polygons. Because in my first work, they were going for the lower number, the better. Yeah. Even with Nanite, though, well, it's context dependent, right? Like, even with Nanite, just add more polygons is not necessarily like the be-all, end-all of it, right? Because it's still, we still need to optimize. There's still ways that you need to avoid like long triangles and all that kind of stuff too for that. Wow. Mac K is asking, how hard is it to get a job in the industry right now? It is hard. I see a lot of doomers, but you do think that it's realistic? If so, any tips to break through that? So my general tips are, you gotta stand out. The way that you've always stood out is by doing good work, right? Especially now in an age of social media, being very visible with your stuff is a way to get additional leverage, right? So posting your work often, being very active, showing work in progress, like basically getting your stuff out there as much as possible. That is always going to help, right? And engaging in communities or engaging with other people, helping them out, like whatever you can do. Because what a lot of people do is they go silent. They do a bunch of work. They post a project, right? So they post like one project on our station, get like a bunch of traction, and then they go silent again. And if from like a tactical perspective, you're basically putting your eggs in a singular basket, right? And what you want to do is you want to get more visibility out there, right? Because we're playing the visibility game, and especially attention, right? So if you can do a combination of the two where you get a lot of attention, because a lot of people are just like following your progress. They're kind of keeping up to date with what you're doing. And then you make awesome work. I think you're already way farther ahead than most people. But the work always needs to be there, right? Because I see a lot of people getting the balance wrong, and they focus so much on getting attention, but then the attention is not going anywhere because the work is not good enough, right? So yeah, you need to find that balance. But it is hard to get a job in this industry. And yeah, in tech right now, it is really hard. But even when I was starting, like, it was really, really hard already, right? Especially games. It's such a passion-driven industry that I don't think that's gonna go away like anytime soon. So yeah. But that doesn't mean that there's no chances. And I think you should just still try it, you know? Still go for it. Because what I don't like is that, so for me personally, right? For me personally, I'm always like pretty careful with what I say, because what sometimes happens is that people get so discouraged by other people discouraging them. I don't want to be like that. I do not think that I should be the person who decides what you're going to do with your future, because I hate the idea of, let's say, I'm discouraging a single person, and that person, because of what I said, doesn't go into an industry that they really, really love. I would hate that. I see, thanks. I feel like I'm in the boat of just being silent and putting out work, which is probably something that I need to work on. Yeah, so in general, right, like, just looking at it in a way where you can, we're talking about modularity of all things, where if you can find multiple things that you can do at the same time without minimal effort from your side, that is a win, in my opinion, right? So if you're already making like a bunch of really interesting visual content, which is our portfolio work, right? You might as well give it a try to just like be more open, share more work in progress, be more active on social media, and then potentially even at the end sell it, you know? Because all of that like is gonna get more out of just a single thing, which is your work, right? Veer is asking, do you ever feel eye or wrist pain when working for long stretches of time? That's hard to say. Wrist pain? No. Eye pain? I have no idea. Because I've suffered with like eye pain, or like so much stuff going on with my eyes anyway, that I can't even pinpoint it to like work. I do know when I get tired, and it's become more apparent over time that I get like very specific headaches. Once I get those headaches, I know that like, okay, I need to chill out. I need to do something different. I'll go to sleep early, all that kind of stuff, right? Take care of yourself first. I really hate the whole doomer and hopelessness thing about the industry. I feel like it's just an NPC take. So it is interesting though, because I think, so, okay, follow me, right? I hope that you see that I'm trying to be optimistic about this, because I really am. But I think there's also a part of it that is also true, where this industry is tough. And this industry is in a really tough spot at the moment, where it's trying to figure out how it's going to continue down the line. Because it can't keep doing what it's trying to be doing for like the last decade. It doesn't work anymore, right? So that's why we're seeing this massive shift that is happening, which is, it would also be kind of ignorant to deny that it has like a massive effect on us, right? So I think in the broad perspective, I think what is going to happen is that, well, this is my hopeful take on it, right? Is that we're going to see more creative driven projects again, because there's a lot of evidence out there right now that if you don't balance the business with the creative, if the business takes over, then at a certain point, people are just going to stop playing, because why would they play? It is just like the next thing in line, you know? It's not that engaging for most people. That's why we're seeing such a massive uptick in indie games, in Roblox games, and Like it coincides with like shorter attention spans and like the younger generations and all that kind of stuff. It is a big topic, but I do think that the future of the industry is interesting and I'm really excited for it. But it's not going to be the industry that I was going into. It's going to be different. Because even when I got into it, it was different than my, let's say, the last couple of years that I've been in. So I think in general, what is really good to keep in mind is that change is always going to be happening. And if you're, especially in games or in tech, I guess, like you have to just be able to adapt to it too. That's what I mean, though. You can say things are tough and the effect it has. I just get frustrated when people don't have nuance and they just parrot the things that are bad. Yeah, but I think that's also mostly because that's what social media is these days, right? I feel like that has a lot to do with it. Because everything just needs to be like hot take, short bites, like just infuriating stuff that people click on it, right? Well, like if you post like a snippet of this, people are just gonna be like, okay, cool. Let's see, a bunch more questions. Thank you so much for the questions. I know we're running over a little bit, but hey, who cares? It is really hard to even know what the quality should be. And Jose is kind of asking something different, right? Like, what is good work? Something that matches the quality of the best modern games, or doing something different than anyone else? So those are some good questions. I think setting yourself a benchmark is really good. I would look at, if you want to set yourself a good benchmark, look at junior portfolios that have recently gotten a gig in the games industry, right? Look at that sliver of ArtStation specifically, because that is the thing that you're targeting for as well. Because it doesn't help that you're like, I want to be like Tim. He makes like a medieval village, so I'm going to make my own medieval village. That is, first of all, stupid for me to do, but I'm still doing it. It would also be stupid for you to do as well, because the only reason why I can build that is because I have all the context that I need to actually be able to execute on it properly, right? Because of the decade of experience that I have. And that is just something that you don't have in the beginning. So you kind of need to look at more appropriate benchmarks to set for yourself. Yeah. But deciding what is good, right? If we're talking about that is a bit more difficult. In the beginning, what I would do is I would try to externalize that as much as possible. I'll explain what I mean by that. Because in the beginning, what you're trying to develop is you're still trying to develop your own artistic eye, right? So you in the beginning, as an artist, cannot decide what is good and bad yet. Especially when it comes to something that you're super close with, right? Like something that you create yourself. So we need to externalize that somehow. So you go ask people from the industry, right? People that are in your specialization that you want to get into, and then say like, hey, look, I'm getting close to finishing this piece. Would you mind giving me 5 minutes of your time and tell me what you think, right? Is this good enough? Couple of pointers, give me bullet point list of what I need to change, or give me a bit of feedback, right? And that's the way that you can increase that. That's also why I'm running this session, right? And I swear that we're going to get to some feedback in a bit, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, because I think in the beginning it's really hard, because you need to develop your own sort of quality benchmark, right, in the beginning, which is really hard to do if you don't have like a solid understanding of the art fundamentals, all the techniques and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. And then Fair is asking, how do you get that attention? Twitter post, Discord? Yeah, both. What I would do is I would go and look at, and this is going to sound so boring for a second, but I think it's just the nature of the game right now. Look at social media tools. There's a tool, for example, called Buffer that I used for a long time, and it basically allows you to make one post, but it will post it on like all your social media platforms, and it's free up until like 3 or 5 channels. I can't remember, but that is basically basically building a habit around like, hey, look, I'm gonna post every week. So what I'll do is I'll just share what I'm working on and then just post it out there, right? And then kind of in the beginning, you want to go scattershot and say like, hey, look, I'm gonna post on X, on Blue Sky, on Discord, whatever, right? Take a bit of your time away from that each week. And then see after a while, you're gonna see that like, oh, there's more traction or more interest, or there's a bigger circle of artists on said platform that you can then gravitate towards. That's the social media stuff. And then do the same thing for Discord, right? Like pick a couple of servers where you can get some traction, or get like a lot of eyeballs, right? Try to engage with them a little bit. I feel in Discord, I wonder if doing a social media for creative course would be a good idea. I've been thinking about it. I kid you not that was like a presentation that I was thinking about. So that might be a good idea. But yeah, going back to it, I think the thing that I was going to say about Discord is that Discord works in a different way, where Discord is not a fire and forget thing. If you want to get the most out of Discord, you have to engage with those Discords. It's more of a community, right? Like there's more of an expectation of engaging with people. And what you want to do is you want to engage in that conversation, whether it is on Discord or on social media. If someone comments on your post, send a comment back, right? Like react on their post, all that kind of stuff. Because it is and always has been a thing. The more that you engage with social media, like the more that you're going to get back from it as well. So you kind of have to play the game. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe we'll do. I'll see if we can potentially do like a presentation of that. All right, we're gonna do one more question, and then we're gonna dive into things. But don't worry, if you have a question in the chat, then we're gonna dive into them like during feedback. But you need to get some feedback done. Let's see. I've tried to split my project up into 3 to 4 small ones so I can post some of it without it taking 6 months. That's also a good idea. And then if you then combine that with like the social media stuff that you're doing on top of it, that could be like really good. And then yeah, what I would also say, and this might be uncomfortable for some people, but getting your real name out there. If it's a professional account, try to do it with your real name. Because if you do it under the pseudonym, like when it comes to actually adding that weight to your recruiter chat or whatever, right? Or your applications, like you're not going to be able to translate the two things together. I think you can still have a separate account, right? Not using your real name, and then just use that for shit posting and all that kind of stuff that you do, but have like a professional and like personal account would be good. Even small things like whips and discords and polycount forums must go a long way. So my strategy, what I did is I had there were a couple of places where I would post Unreal Engine forums every week, polycount every week. Then also there were some other places as well, like CG Hub, and then later that kind of translated into ArtStation blogging, right? So I kind of rolled that into like an ArtStation blog, and I did that every week. But I tried to get traction with that. That'll be my playbook. All right, get a sip of water. Oh, quick question from Slate: is using an alpha map for sculpting fine for a portfolio? Yes, 100%. Unless you're going for like a super specific like sculpting, well, not even that. No, let's keep it simple. Yes, totally fine. Even the people that work on like God of War and all that kind of stuff, right? If you look at Ivana Lichwager, who we had for the workshop, he uses alphas and all that kind of stuff too, right? They're just tools. So yes, totally fine. Hello, 3D Ben. Welcome. Okay, let's switch things on over. Let's actually get started on some feedback. Let's see. let's get some context here as well. So let me open the work in progress stuff. If you are in chat and you're participating in this event, feel free to raise your hand and then we'll do it by that order and then go random afterwards. So feel free to raise your hand. MechVals first. Let's go. Okay. Let's go for MechVal. I didn't do any prep for you today. Sorry. Bunch of stuff going on in the background, but let's see. Where is your post? There it is. So, questions. I've been trying to get an RGB mask workflow and got some questions about my current implementation. I currently use 2 channels to blend in 2 materials, one for the moss and the grass and one for the edgeware. Is this a workflow that is usually used in production? Or is it too heavy with multiple textures? Wait, using 2 channels and 2 materials? Oh, instead of using like one channel, one texture on one material, you're basically using a texture on each material, right? Is that the way that I'm reading this? And then you're only using 2 channels of that texture. UDIMs? No, no UDIMs. We're not doing VFX stuff. No. You use 2 channels for the RGB masks. Okay, but you do... Oh, to blend in 2 materials, sorry. Is that a workflow that's actually used in production, or is it too heavy with multiple textures? Oh, I see what you mean. You're basically just using it as a mask. Yeah, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. It's just a different way of deciding where one thing is going to go, right? Like just different masking technique. So that's completely fine. So yeah, you're just using like red and blue, right? You got red and then blue and those like decide. I would still, yeah, for now, exactly. So I would still find a way, which I think you do anyway. I would still find a way to like fill all the channels, right? Fill it up nice and tight, because otherwise it's just a channel that could be used for something. But yeah, no, that works fine. So yeah, that's totally fine. Oh, basically the question was just about like blending materials, right? Rather than doing anything on top. So yeah. So blending materials. I mean, that's the way that it's done, right? Yeah, rather than just color tinting or something like that. Exactly. Yeah. That's honestly how we use RGB masks as well, right? So the way that we use it in the industry is just we have just multiple materials, and then just the channels decide where we scatter one thing or the next, right? It's totally fine. Cool. That was an easy question. Well, apart from me getting confused, but hey, it's nothing new. So the second question is regarding the amount of detail to put into the mesh. Since I'm not baking a high poly, can I rely on textures to give me the detail, or should I add some more detail to the mesh? It kind of depends on what you want to do with this. I'm assuming that this is not going to be like the end mesh. Oh, this is a cliff tool. Well, so interestingly enough, for a cliff tool, I wouldn't scatter them. Like, I wouldn't break them up. I think for a cliff, you can honestly get away with just having like a tileable texture over the whole thing. Especially as a base, right? You don't actually want to do like a lot of cutting. Because if we look at this, I mean, it actually looks a little fake, right? Or it just doesn't look great. Like if you actually look at the references, right? You will probably see that a lot of it is just like the surface with then just like some cracks, but actual like big cuts in them, it's probably not going to happen as frequently as we're kind of making it out to be. Yeah. So yeah, that would be my opinion on that. Like you could use the two in conjunction, right? So what you could do is have, okay, let's see. Let's do a quick sketch. So let's see you have your entire cliff, right? So this is like your huge cliff. What you could do is say like, hey, look, the bottom, that is going to be mesh, right? And then the top, that's going to be mesh. The top and the bottom, usually because that is where the blending, where the seams are going to be most visible, right? So if we have those seams, we kind of want to cover that up with meshes because they're always going to look better compared to your normal landscape or whatever, right? But then the rest of it, we actually do want to use texture on that instead, and then pick a couple of spots where you can be like, hey, look, like this area can be like a cool, unique rock that we, or like a rock that we kind of shove into it. Right, but like the majority of it should still be your tileable, in my opinion. So that's the way that I would build that up. If we're talking, yeah. Saying that right? I'm really thinking about this visually. Well, so no matter what we do, right? No matter what we do, we're going to need a tileable if we want to be optimized for long distance, right? Because we need something to be able to call out. Because at a certain point, like making all the cliffs in a scene like this is going to be, it's going to be too intensive, right? Just like the amount of assets. Right, because I struggled to get it looking right on the large cliffs when I last started working on the cliffs. Yeah, I think there is something that you can definitely make improvements. Well, no, you can actually just use like the workflow that we were using before, right? So where you have like all your individual meshes from different sizes, and then you just like bash them into each other to kind of create like a nicer looking cliff, but then have the backing of it. Well, no, actually, yeah, okay. Okay, we're gonna change something here. So, sorry, we're gonna go a little bit all over the place because there's always like 1,000 ways of doing the same thing. The way that we were going about this for you, though, is I think let's do a diagram, right? So, usually in this case, what we do is we have a cliff asset, which is usually just, you know, a cliff like this with like just like a bunch of like rock faces on it, right? But the back of it is actually hollow to save ourselves some performance because no one's ever going to look at the back of it anyway, right? So that's going to be hollow. And then we can kind of do the same technique as we did here by like covering up like the smaller sections with like smaller assets again. Right, so it could still be a rock as well. Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, but then going back to your question, I don't know, we're jumping all over the place. But for that, you could use a tileable on top of it. So like a plane with displacement and a unique meshes to keep it interesting. Yeah, exactly. So like that's why I just confused myself, I think. So this guy over here would be made out of a tileable, right? That you can displace it, or you can do what you said. You can do in-engine displacement, or you can do blended displacement, or Houdini displacement, and then make it into an actual geo, you could do that. And then unique rocks could basically come on top of it. Right. Okay, we got there in the end. Sorry for the confusion. But yeah, that would be a better way of doing it. And that's also going to give you like more visual interest as well. So yeah. Let's see. But yeah, good progress. I hope you had fun in playing Battlefield. I installed it and then never played it because I ended up not having time. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Okay, cool. Thank you, McVal. Next one up. I'm suspecting it will take up this weekend as well. Yeah, I hope. I think I'm gonna have time. I think I'm gonna be so busy again. Dang it. Well, we can play it once it's out. Let's see. Sergu. Let's have a look. There we go. Oh yeah, this was a quick question, right? So the main question was about the pipes. So we have like the pipes on the left. I'm assuming that it's talking about like these guys, right? And like all of the pipes basically. So like all of this stuff, right? And then basically the question was, do they feel overwhelming? And do they draw attention away from the building itself? They do a little bit from the building itself, but I don't think it's a big issue because that building is meant to be like a background asset anyway, right? So even in here, like the building is pretty much covered up and I don't really care about that building. So I would say comparing it to the concept again, like the buildings here, if you have them like cluttered full of stuff, doesn't matter as much as again this building here, right? This building needs to be like nice and readable, and then the rest of it becomes a little bit less important in terms of like the hierarchy, right? So if we look at the whole thing again, we can kind of see like this stuff here, it doesn't matter if it's like pretty noisy or anything like that. It would be an issue if it's super noisy and then also like extremely well lit, but because it is all like the similar sort of like colors, then we're not putting like a lot of attention to it. So yeah. Another thing that I wanted to add here, if you do this in gray box, like adding all the detail in it in the gray box is always going to feel noisy because we don't have that additional layer of actual color and lighting and all that kind of stuff like fully fleshed out yet, right? So the building now looks way more distracting than it's ever going to be once we start putting like the colors and the textures and all that kind of stuff on it. Hello, Sahils. You can find a link to becoming a member of our community in the description. So feel free to click that link. It is a paid community though. So just wanted to bring that up, make sure that we're setting the right expectations. But yeah, so balancing it later on with lighting and color is going to give you like a lot of flexibility. You know, we don't need to be carried away by like, oh my God, like I'm so worried about this now. I think that's also what a lot of people say when they mean trust the process, right? It is like in any part of the process, you can still be like, hey, look, this is a bit too much. So I'm just gonna get rid of it in a different way, right? You probably heard me say this like a bunch of times where we have like different like visual levers that we can pull. We can reduce the detail in the geometry, we can reduce the color, like all that kind of stuff, and we can still do that on the fly to balance our image until it's done. So yeah, wouldn't be worried about it. Great progress though. Like other people are saying, Daniel said that this looks awesome. It really does. I like all the assets coming in. The proportions feel really nice. So yeah, awesome stuff, man. Some stuff. Keep it up. Oh, let me do a little star. There we go. A little star, a little badge. Great stuff. Right. Next one in line, Daniel. Daniel's up next. Let's have a look. I did do a little prep for you, Daniel. You even got a little heart. Because I really like the choice of the concept. So the choice of the concept is really great because it is so focused and you can just really go ham on like all the textures, right? Which is going to be really, really cool to see. So great choice. Sergio is saying, thank you a lot. Hopefully I can make more progress for the next week. Yeah, but gotta always keep in mind, like slow and steady wins the race, you know? So making any progress is still better than making no progress. Good stuff. Let's see. Daniel, what can I help you with? I'm looking for feedback on composition, lighting, and texturing. Cool. I wrote down composition and lighting stuff, but I didn't write anything about texturing, so we'll see just a minute. So first, composition. There was like one thing that like really struck out to me, and it is that the composition in the concept feels like it's way more stretched out. So like the field of view is like exaggerated. Because you can kind of tell by like how much like the lines, like the viewing lines, are actually distorting like the proportions and perspective in the scene. So that could be something to play around with by just like increasing your what would we do for that? Simple way would just, oh no, probably not FOV. Yeah, how would I do that? Like in Unreal? That's actually a good question. I guess FOV is the way that I've always done it, but that always felt like such a hacky way, you know? But yeah, FOV can definitely help here. Because your FOV is basically going to exacerbate your perspective, right? And that's all we're looking for. It's just to really enhance that a little bit more. Then when it comes to the lighting, the main thing that really struck to me is just like how intense the highlight in the scene is, right? So we can kind of see that this highlight over here is like way more intense compared to the highlight here. So yeah. Let's see, is that just coming from here? I guess so. So yeah, that is what I wanted to point out, is just like the comparison between the two. That one is a lot more tame. I didn't want it to bleed out. I think it could be cool because the contrast between the two, it is really striking, right? And I think instead of having it bleed out, it would be worth experimenting with, not necessarily like pushing the highlights so far that they bleed out, potentially, or maybe just a little bit, because we are working with like a white surface here, right? So like this stuff, it is bleeding out, right? It's really hard to distinguish like the tap from like the base of it, right? But I don't think it's necessarily that bad in this case. It's almost done in like an artistic way, right? It's like you have your rule set where it's like, oh, we want to have like your histogram of your scene needs to be done like this, and those are the rules. But then an artist comes in and kind of like shatters them. But that is up to you though. What you can definitely do is add a little bit of bloom, you know, because there is the actual intensity of the light, but on the opposite side, there's also the perception of the intensity of the light, right? And I feel like bloom is a great way of kind of getting some of that additional kick without necessarily making your lights brighter. Some bloom could work here. Yeah, here's the thing. That would be my recommendation, sir. Not Sergio. Sorry, I saw your name pop up in the chat there. That would be my recommendation, Daniel. To play around with the lighting, make it a bit more intense. And then at the end of the day, if you still say like, hey, look, I don't like where this is going, it's still your art, right? So feel free to decide with that whatever you want. Yeah, and then adding a little bit of bloom. I think that's going to be cool. I think what could be really interesting is we're almost seeing, yeah, you kind of, if we're looking here, right, especially this area, we're seeing a lot of atmospherics, like a little bit of dust. And that could be cool if we, I'm imagining that you have like a rectangular light that is like slightly angled forward. And we kind of have just like an opening here, right? And then that is just like blasting like light into it. Maybe like a little bit of dust, a little bit of atmospherics. Can help sell the volumetric nature. Yeah, it's a rect light. That's good. That's good. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I do like this highlight here, though. I mean, on the character specifically. So interesting. Interesting choice to have it there. But yeah, cool. When it comes to the textures, I think you're doing a great job on it already. I think a scene like this is just, we need more layers. In a scene like this, when I talk about layers, it's not necessarily baking them into the tileable or whatever, right? But it's just, we need to stuff on the floor. And like just gunk, debris, decals, you know, like a bunch of that stuff, just like lying on the floor. So it's a combination of maybe making your texture just like a little bit dirtier, but not too much. And then making a dirtier version, painting that into the corners, and then layering it up with decals, and then also assets on top of it. So it's like all these layers need to come together. So at first we got your base texture, right, which is your tileables. Then we got your damaged versions. Right, so your damaged versions of those textures, which could, they always help, just like sell the blending of it. And we have your decals, and then for the big stuff, we kind of have like some additional assets, some debris piles and all that kind of stuff. Because yeah, we can kind of see that here, right? Is there a better way? Yeah. So you can kind of see that here, even though it's tileable. Like, let's say this section is number 1. And from this section, we're kind of bleeding into like number 2, which is a damaged version. And then you have like number 3 here, which is like all the decals. Right? And then you have this stuff, which is just like number 4, which is like an asset. And that is always like, it's nice to have like a gradient, right? Or like a slope or whatever you want to look at it. Where we go from like number 1 to number 4 in that way. Cool. Nice one, Daniel. Yeah, again, good shout on the concept. It's gonna be fun to execute, especially if you like doing like textures and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna be cool to see this coming about. Yeah. Awesome, thank you so much. No worries, Daniel. Best of luck and have fun with it. Right on, next point. Oh, sorry, Zoe. Did I say hi before? I didn't see you come in. You're just sneaking in. Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Long pig. Long pig. Coming with the long knife. Oh, yeah. Kazuki sending me a DM. That's good. Thanks, Kazuki. Let's go back to work in progress. Long knife. Ah, okay, we got some references. Okay. Mm-hmm. Ah, I see. Okay, so interestingly enough, like the reason why I asked for references. Let me get this in here. And this is going to be an interesting conversation about yeah, where we deviate from a concept or something like that, right? Doing some late night portfolio work. Hell yeah, so we yeah, but I was talking about this shape, and this shape was like, it is probably like the most awkward thing about this whole knife, really, because it feels so modern and so precise. Even though you tried your best by like denting up the edges and all that kind of stuff, you know what it feels like? And I don't mean this in like a very demeaning way, right? It's almost like you took your low poly and then we're just like really lazy with it, and that's what you stuck with. I know that that's not the case because I know that you put like a lot of attention to detail in like the blade, for example, right? And like all this stuff looks like really nice. It is just the shape of the handle that almost feels like, yeah, that you were like, yeah, the best way that I can say it is like that you were lazy even though you were not, right? It was the design of it. So, and I want to say that I don't want you to change it now. I think it's fine that we keep it that way. I did have a potential solution to this though, which might. Do I have the geo here? See, I don't have a picture of the geo. What we can do. So this is an interesting creative. The sharp cuts on the grip, yes, exactly, to make it like more precise. It feels like they're just like low poly like edges, right? Like the sharp cuts, like the very modern look of it. What we could do with that though, because this is a creative challenge, right? That's the way that I tend to look at these things. Is okay. So we wanna break up this shape that we see here. How do we do that? What we can do is we're kind of going for like, this is an old blade, right? So can we do something more with like lifting some of the edges up potentially, so that like this thing, when, or this section where after this bolt, right, it kind of bends up, like it's almost like the wood has been wet for a while, so we're kind of introducing like more imperfections to the whole thing. It's up to you, right? Because I know that I'm suggesting something that is going to require like a little bit of work. Because let me see. What we are basically trying to sell with this is that we were restricted by the low poly nature of the handle, right? But then what we did to like counteract the feeling of it feeling like it was like really simple, we then made sure that we added additional detail to kind of sell that it was like very intentional, right? If that makes sense. And then we can potentially have like this bolt like, kind of coming out of it a little bit. Like splitting away from the metal underneath. Yes. I will say this, it depends on your own motivation, right? If you think that's a good idea, if you're kind of done with the project, there's a lot of stuff for you to take in and even think if that would be like a way to go, right? But what I'm trying to do with this, so this would be split from the metal. What I'm trying to do with this is try to sell the idea of that you do pay attention. I mean, this all sounds so personal. Sorry, I don't mean it's so personal, but that we do pay attention to the details of the mesh, even though we're restricted by the shape of the mesh being so low poly, right? So we kind of need to do some extra work to kind of sell that idea. Cool. I hope that makes sense. Now, I completely skipped over your questions. I'm sorry about that. So let's see. First of all, amazing progress, by the way. You know, the textures feel like way better, feels like way more realistic. The lighting, great job on the lighting too. Because before it was kind of looking like really dark. I feel like the whole blade, like the way that it looks now, reads like really natural, right? Like reads like really, really well done. So awesome job on those two things. Noted that. So the lighting and the materials have improved like greatly. And that's awesome. Let's try to make it at least readable, huh? But let's dive into your questions. So any feedback on the sculpt and the textures would be greatly appreciated. For the poly count, it cost me to sculpt each individual piece. I'm not sure it was worth it. Yeah, I think you're right, because I mean we do have like some of this stuff, right? Which looks like really nice. I really like those edges. But now it's more a case of like, okay, how do we sell that properly, right? I know that you had more screenshots, right? And I had to kind of cut it down. But like just having like a screenshot where this becomes a focal point could be really good. Let's have a look. Because yeah, there is definitely more that you can squeeze out of this, right? That's also where this guy comes in too. It's just really trying to make more of the sculpt, because I think the metal work is done great. But yeah, if the metal work is done is that damaged, then I'm also expecting like to see more damage on the wood as well, right? Maybe, yeah, just especially breaking up like some of these edges potentially could work. Potentially. Again, it depends on where you are in the project, right? But sometimes what I'm looking towards is like your instinct of, hey, I think that I could have gotten more out of my sculpt because now I did like a whole bunch of sculpting and this is like the outcome. So maybe this is the point where you can still go back and then be like, hey, look, I'm gonna double down and make more out of the sculpts, right? I'm gonna get more out of it. Yeah. It's not a bad shout. Sometimes you have to just follow the instincts there. Yeah. My next step is to make some decisions about the presentation. I would like to keep the scene simple and not overcomplicated so I can finish it quickly. Cool. I have some ideas for additional assets to complement the sword, but I'm not sure if it's worth adding too much or if I should just keep restricting it to simple tiling materials with display of the sword on. So a really simple technique that we can do here is you just go to like Megascans or something like that. Get like a nice tileable, make like a simple fabric with like a couple of folds in it, right? Like do some really quick like Blender simulations or whatever program you want to use. Make it look like it's actually on like a piece of like folded fabric or something like that. And then yeah, that's already going to help a lot, honestly. So yeah, for the presentation. And honestly, you don't even have to make the fabric yourself. Just get it from wherever you can get it, right? But something like that is usually like an elegant solution to it. I have a lot of trouble with roughness in Unreal Engine. I don't know why, but it takes me a lot of tweaking to make it look like the way it does in Substance. Did you try changing the tone mapping into ACES to match Unreal Engine's renderer? There's a video from William Foucher. It should do that by default, if I'm not mistaken now. But that was a thing for the longest time. It is still worth checking it though. Well, and especially if you have like an outdated version of Substance Painter. But it should do that by default, I think. Another thing also, if you are working with packed maps or anything like that, make sure that whenever you have channel pack textures, you need to uncheck sRGB. There is a preset for this. It is in your texture settings if you set it to masks, which should do it by default, honestly. And then it should untag like sRGB. Because that will also fuck up your values with the roughness too. So that can definitely be helpful there too. Yeah. Good stuff, Long Pig. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing your work. No worries. Cool. Okay. Let's do a couple of quick ones then. Let's go with Ahmed. Oh, before I do, if there's any other people in the chat that are a part of the session, feel free to raise your hand and then we'll get to you first. Because that would be awesome. There were also a couple more questions back then. Let's see. I don't know if you're still here, Foxy Kids, because it's been a while. I keep losing track of time. In your opinion, what would be an ideal number of polished, high-quality props to include in a 3D artist portfolio when seeking entry-level job opportunities? Quantity doesn't matter. It's the quality, right? You can get a job with a single asset, which is not what I would recommend. But there's also people that have gotten jobs with like polished high quality props on their portfolio, but they're not good enough, right? So it is always a question of how good does something look, not the amount of them that you have. Yeah, I would not recommend going with one. One is like putting, again, all your eggs in one basket. It's not a great way to go. But there's no number, really. Let's see. Atakan is asking, I have one more question. Which parameters should be considered to create my own stylized texture collection using Designer and Painter? Normal and other maps? Or another? Oh, are you talking about like the base texture that you need? Yeah, base color, normal, roughness, and then depending on what you need. Ambient occlusion, if you are using that. Metallic if you're using metallic textures. But other than that, those are the standard ones, honestly. When it comes to anything else, it becomes more specific. It becomes more dependent on what you need. For example, subsurface scattering you only need when you want to see through stuff like fabrics or foliage. Yeah. Oh, thanks for still being around, Foxy Kiss. I hope that answered the question. Let's see. I remember I.E. Sanchez saying that critical thinking is the most important skill to have as an artist, and it seems like something that will only come with time. Yeah, I mean, that's a good skill to just have in life, I feel, right? Like critical thinking can be applied to so many things. Do you think it's worthwhile to send personal letters? Are they even read by anyone? Well, this comes down to the market that we're currently in, right? If everyone is doing like generic boilerplate, like templated CVs and cover letters, that is a way that you can stand out. I'm not sure if it's the best way because I'm so biased against doing cover letters, honestly. I've never read one in my life, even though I've made like a couple of them. Yeah. I hope that they're read. That's my hope. Yeah, I have no idea. Jose's asking, is it productive to alternate between styles, like 3 months of semi-realistic and then 3 months of stylized, or should you just stick to one? I would stick to what you want to do in your portfolio is you want to showcase one dominant style, right? Because your portfolio is basically a calling card for like, hey, this is what I want to do. So the more that you start diluting the stuff that you want to do, the more difficult it is for a company to then be like, hey, look, we have this position open with these specific parameters. Who do we fit within those parameters, right? So let's say a stylized project. And if you have semi-stylized, you have realistic, you have hand-painted, you have all that kind of stuff, then that company is less likely to hire you because you're all over the place, right? And that might showcase that you actually don't know what you want to do yet. So it is fine to take your time to explore styles, which everyone should do in the beginning. But as soon as you got like an inkling of like, hey, I really enjoy this, then dive into that style and dedicate yourself more towards it. 2 more questions, and then we'll scroll down to the chat. 3 more questions because Veer just asked a question as well. So, we actually answered this one, the alpha map one, sculpting. Udaya is asking, I have been a CG artist for almost 18 years, mostly in lighting and shading for linear rendering, but I wanted to get into games as an environment artist. What are my chances of getting hired? I mean, you can use those skills to transfer into environment art, right? So it's definitely not a bad thing to have that as a base. But your chances of getting hired, I mean, they're higher than someone who doesn't have those skills, right? But there's so much context there that we need to get into, like the place that you live, like the availability, the quality of the work that you've been doing over this 18 years, like the project that you worked on, the clients that you've worked with. Like there's so much context there that we need before we can actually just talk about like, okay, you got a good chance in X or a good chance in Y, right? And then, do you think it's important for environment artists to have a strong understanding of design? Things like area of rest, 70-30, etc. It's interesting, like design skills by themselves, not necessarily. But you do have some of those like generic like rules of art, like 70-30, that can be applied not only to design, but also to your environments, right? Like just from a visual perspective, it is good to have lots of rest so that you can then funnel people to the objective that they need to be focused on, right? And then we can do that in so many ways. I mean, I talk about it so much here, right? That you can do it with color, you can do it with geometry, you can do it with textures. Like there's so many ways to create that area of rest versus detail. But design skills as actual like hard surface design, not crucial. I don't really have like design skills myself, right? But there's a lot of those design principles that kind of bleed over into the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis, which could be really interesting to know about. All right. Ahmed is up next. So yeah, great progress, Ahmed. Looks way more realistic. I got like the screenshot from here from last week. I mean, it is literal night and day, you know? Great job on relighting the scene. Looks way more focused. It actually feels really realistic now. So great job on completely overhauling the scene, especially with the lighting. Great job there. And then you still say that you're like, I want to focus on the coffee machine specifically, right? So how do we get people to look at the coffee? If that is a thing that you want people to look at, right? I've noted some. This is actually what we just talked about, right? Like, how do we draw attention to like a certain area of the scene? It is we need to make it stand out by contrasting it with its surroundings. And there's multiple ways of doing this, right? Like we can do it with color, we can do it with details, which is like textures, geometry, all that kind of stuff. We can do it with lighting. We can also do it with story as well. And then also something that I wanted to, especially in your case, because I saw that you added humans in the mix. Be careful of adding humans, because a face, we always gravitate towards a face. So as humans, we tend to gravitate towards other humans. We have like an affinity with, like, naturally, right? So especially if they're looking at you, then that's already going to be drawing attention to us. So be careful with how you use them and how important they are to the scene. I think it could be nice to have like a character here, right? And then having him kind of like smoking, but then maybe like facing towards the corner or something like that. Or maybe not fully towards the corner, but at least not like looking straight at us, right? Because that is pulling us in. And we want to avoid that if the focus needs to be here. First question though, I kind of noted it down here, is the first question you need to ask is, why the coffee machine? Right? I think you can have the coffee machine as your focus point, but I want to know why. Because if you can answer the question why, just answer that for yourself, is already going to help you with deciding what you need to do, basically to get to the how, right? You need to answer the why, and then we can see what we need to do to get you to focus there. Because for example, if we then add like a story, right? Maybe there's like a sale on coffee and we just have like a giant like sale sign. Right? Like a giant like bombastic like sale sign in the back, and then there's like a bunch of flyers here. That is already going to draw us in more, right? But yeah, it is. My question is, why the coffee machine? And ask yourself that question. Try to answer it genuinely, because that is the answer to that question is going to then grant you the ability to then add more stuff or more context to it. Beer is saying leading lines as well. Yep, leading lines can definitely help too. Leading lines are definitely a good choice to add in there, so. Yes, yes. God, you scared me. So, yeah. Quick little bit of feedback, but yeah, that question on why the coffee machine is definitely going to be helpful. Yeah. Thanks, Amit. Gonna be blasting through some more here. So let's have a look at Frigga. So welcome for your first post, Frigga. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for posting your work. So I'm creating a dungeon going for stylized look. I've tested the first modules, the walls, and baseboards, and they work well on Unreal Engine. Now we need to block out the stones before moving on to ZBrush. I would like some feedback on how the stones look in the different modules. Is it a lot of repetition? Am I on the right track? Cool. Okay, so talking about repetition. Your repetition depends on a couple of things here, right? So the size of the space, that means how big of a dungeon are we making? How much stuff are we going to see in one view, right? Because this is just a singular view with all of them unique. So that is not a good use case for repetition. So with these, we basically need to build. The best way to find that out, if you have your modules, is build it. And I mean this in a way where we can already use these modules, and literally this overpaint that you did right? Like turn that into a texture, slap it on all the modules really quickly, and then see how it looks, right? Like actually see what it looks like, because that's gonna help a lot. It's gonna give us a lot of context, right? So yeah, and that context is gonna be super important. Right. I think there's a lot of potential with the coffee machine. Interested to see the direction they take with it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the beauty about it, right? Like any artistic creation, you can focus on anything. You can make a story about the coffee machine. You can make a story about like a floating billboard in the sky. You can make a story about anything. That's cool, right? We can kind of construct all the context around it ourselves. So yeah, Frigga. So try building the space first and see how they look with like a simple texture on top of it, right? Like that's going to be the best way to actually see what you need to do yourself. Cool. I did have another thing to say about the workflow that you're going to be using though. So you want to start blocking in like all the stones like individually and then start sculpting on them, right? Which is not the way that I would take this approach, because that is, first of all, going to take up a lot of time, and it's also an inflexible way of working. What I would do, depending on what you wanted to do with those stones, is I would have separate rocks for these modules, for example. So these are still going to be built out of like separate rocks that we're going to be using, right? And then those rocks, we can actually just like grab them and then just build like our tileable out of them, right? Without having to like resculpt a bunch of stuff. And when I say a tileable, I mean that like most of these assets, especially the wall pieces, that is all just going to be tileable stuff. So if I were to like break it down to you, right? These ones, they're going to be made out of like those individual stones. But then the core wall pieces, they are going to be built out of a tileable. Because it's just like way more flexible. It's easier to work with. It gives you, yeah, just a lot more flexibility going down the line. Same for the floor pieces as well. You can just make those out of a tileable too. And then we can make these baseboards or whatever trims or whatever you want to do out of unique stones again. I also got another recommendation. Make like a pillar that you can stick in corners or to cover up seams where we need to. Because there is going to be an issue here where if you use a tileable, like we can make a tileable that works perfectly for a 4-meter section, but that does mean that we're only going to be using half of the texture for this, which means that the tiling is going to break between this and this module, right? So yeah, I would have like a pillar for those cases where you do need to have a shorter section, and then you can have something to cover that up, right? Cover up those seams that you start introducing there. Gonna head off for the night. Appreciate your time, Tim. Catch you next week. Catch you, well, not next week. Next week, Gamescom time. So we'll be here next week. Yeah. Last tip that I'll give, Frigga, is I said hide your seams here. Which means that if we disable this, currently what is happening is you have the edges of your stones perfectly aligned with the seams of your modules, right? This is going to be super visible. So we need to reduce that by overlapping are titleable. So let's say, yeah, it's gonna be a blast. Thank you, Veer. So let me look up a quick section here. Oh my god, there's so much AI stuff in here already. Oh god. Okay. Let's get a quick from Stan Brown. That'll do. Yeah, oh, this is a perfect example. So this is an example from Stan Brown. Hello, please. Thank you. So, okay, we're gonna do some shenanigans here. You can see that he has a square in the back, which is like basically the edges of his titleable, right? But then he has like a bunch of stuff like overlapping to make sure that the seam is not like super visible. And then what you do there is you basically take all the rocks that are overlapping. Right, so you take all of this stuff. Just gonna do it really quickly. And then you move that here, because you can tell this rock is this rock. This rock is that rock. Because what we want to do is we want to preserve the tiling nature, right? Because we don't want to break like how it tiles, but we want to break up how visible the seam is. And that's why we do this stuff. Because if we then do something like this, this is not going to be as visible as I wanted it to be. Where is that? So we can kind of see that like these are the rocks that overlap, but then the tiling still like just continues like seamlessly. And that's what we want to keep in mind, right? So we want to preserve the tiling, but we want to get rid of the seam. And that's what you need to do, because otherwise it's going to be, we're basically making it look intentionally like blocks, and we need to get rid of them. So just wanted to say that as well. Hide your seams. And I hope that helps, Riga. Right, moving straight along. Let's go for Dylan next. I do need to speed up here a little bit, or else I'm going to be in bed way too late. Oh. Dylan has a quick question. Basically, which one do you prefer? I prefer number A. I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick things. Like, the reason why I prefer it is because it really just works with the composition, right? The composition was meant to be powerful, but also immovable. So it kind of feels static, right? Where if you do a composition that incorporates the rule of thirds, it is going to be more dynamic, right? Because we're introducing more movement and more movement in the scene and all that kind of stuff. So for a scene that you want to feel powerful, you want to feel like it's immovable, it's been there for a while, right? You can use a central composition because it actually reinforces the underlying fundamentals of what the scene is built upon. Right? It's a scene that has been there through time, and then making something like this kind of works in the same reaction, right? So for me, it's number A. That's what I would go for. No doubts. And then you can still do like videos or other stuff with like the rule of thirds, right? Where you add movement and all that kind of stuff. You can still do that. Some flexibility in there. I was saying such a nice mood. Yeah, it really is. It really is. Very serene kind of scene. Yeah. Cool stuff. Cool stuff, Dylan. That was a quick one. Let's see. Potentially like another quick one from Big Mike. Big Mike is doing some cool stuff with his AR-15. What do you think of the render in context? There's before we get to that, there was a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. So, I love that you added additional geo, right? I think that looks really, really good. The only thing that I have to say on that specifically is you have to think about how those layers would actually be done in real life, right? And I know we're getting so specific, but for example, this one is going to be going underneath this one, right? And then this one is going to go underneath this one. So we kind of expect to see like a bump here. And then if this one goes underneath here, that's fine. But we kind of want to see those layers as well, where it feels like what you're doing instead is you have this little bump and then it goes immediately back down, this little bump. It is fine to still add a little bit more geo and kind of just make it like nice and smooth and add like a little lip and all that kind of stuff, right? And then do the same thing here where it goes up, add a little lip. I know we're talking about a lot of details, but these are the details that really, really matter. Like really make it, in my opinion. That we can really feel like the layering of like the rubber or like the grip. Right? That's like the little drawing that I did here as well. You can kind of see that like the one layer goes underneath the other layer, and that kind of creates like this little bump that we have here. But it's looking way better already. Like a massive improvement. I think it looks really, really nice. Watch out for those minor spikes that you still have, but otherwise it's looking good. Then we're going to your question. So your question was about the render in context. You were asking, is it too cluttered, or do you think it would be fine to add another detail? I think it is getting a lot, right? It is getting a lot to look at. And sometimes what is really effective with some of these scenes is less is more. Because there's a lot of stuff asking for your attention. And we also have a lot of different textures and a lot of different like lighting contrast, because you have like shadows and darkness and all that kind of stuff. So there's basically you're making use of like all the levers that we have as artists at the same time. And we need to decide like, hey, look, we're going to simplify some of it and then emphasize other bits of it, right? That's why I added these two. This is from a friend of mine, from Will. Some great stuff on weapons. His take is more of a design take, right? So he goes to like bold colors, and then you can really clearly see, this is a great example of like, hey, I want contrast in my scene, right? So you have like the gun by itself and a very contrasting background. It's an extreme example, but I think it's a good one in terms of what you can do when you decide to take it more the design kind of route. Then for something that is probably going to be a little bit more aligned with what you want to do, you have something like this, right? But look at how simple it is. It's just a couple of bullets and then just the weapon itself, because we need the weapon to shine, right? That is our focal point. So for all the stuff that you did, like we can really reduce like a lot of it and just focus on the stuff that matters, right? Like even if you just have the gun, maybe with like a little bit of a backpack like next to it here, that could be good enough, right? And then maybe, I don't know, maybe there's like a case, like some bullets sticking out. But yeah, I think a good question is, yeah, I wrote it down here, right? So what are we saying? Like with all the clutter that we added, is like, imagine yourself in this position. Like it's almost like this weird, random, chaotic picnic that is also trying to showcase a weapon, right? But try to imagine yourself in that position and just think about like, okay, how am I going to present that gun, right? Like how, if you want to go for like a more natural environment, like how do I just make it look like it's almost like, hey, we're going on a picnic with a gun or whatever, right? But this feels too staged. So simplifying it is going to make it feel more natural. So something like this. Yeah. But I'll leave that up to you, Big Mike. But yeah, the render in context looks great, right? Like that route, the way that you're presenting it and the way that you're adding all the layers and like how you're adding them, it's too much, but there is good underlying thoughts there, right? Like really good use of all the mechanics. We're just adding too many mechanics. Cool. Next one up. Let's see if we have more quick ones. I think so. Hey Mike, glad that helped. Great stuff on the gun, man. It's coming together like really nicely. The presentation is gonna look sick. Forward to it. Jake, let's have a look. The skull. Cool. I'm looking for feedback more on the final detail side, such as damage and roughness ideas. If I should exaggerate cuts and sharpness and stuff. All right, let's have a look. Yeah, I think in general with cuts, like really good job, right? Like really interesting job on the cuts by themselves. I think the way that we can really emphasize some of the areas is like really pinching and opening certain areas. So for example here, right? Like if you know that this is going to be playing out like that, like really crunching it down and then maybe like opening it back up. Right, and then doing the same here. So that we're almost just, yeah, we're really just pinching some of the details. And then we can apply that in certain areas, right? Because overall, I think it's a good choice. But like sometimes you just need to go in with like a pinch brush and say like, hey, look, this area, I'm just gonna pinch it slightly. And this area maybe too, you know? And you just pick like a couple of areas where you just do that. And we're already creating like a bit more variation in it. And then especially where you go in a transition in like very strong curves or something like that, that's where a real opportunity arises to like go in with like broad strokes and just be like, okay, we're gonna open it a bit more. Right? And like really open that up. So yeah, the general idea is it's more about the contrast between the elements, right? That is gonna be interesting. You can kind of see that here, this area, then also some of these areas too. But we did. I think overall it's looking really good. I had a look at like the teeth and all that kind of stuff that you did. That's looking sick. Be curious to see though, like there's like so much detail. But it might be worth doing like a test bake to see if you're even going to see that detail. Because some of this stuff is so small, right? Like some of these areas are so small that it's not even going to be captured by the resolution of your textures. So it can actually save you a bunch of time knowing how deep you need to go or like how detailed you need to go with certain areas so that you can just get away with doing less detailed stuff. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. When it comes to damage, I think what I'm missing is I'm kind of missing a hint of like porosity, right? That you have like these little divots and like a little you probably have them in here somewhere. So creepy. Yeah, kind of just like the surface texture where you can kind of feel that it is bone porosity, right? So just picking a couple of areas where you're going to be like, hey, look, this is going to be like a bigger divot. Up here, there's going to be like a bigger divot. And up here, maybe. And it's more like picking spots with like more unique detail. That's going to help a lot as well. Yeah, great stuff though, Jake. Really cool to see. Really cool to see. It's been a long time since I've looked at any anatomy. So, really cool to see someone doing it. Photogrammetry skull inspiration is really cool to look at. You can probably get some like really cool data out of that. Yep, cool. Hope that was helpful, Jake. Best of luck with it. Let's see. Our tale for Alejandro. Let's have a look. So the two questions for today. I'm starting to think about set dressing and getting this environment look lived in. The main reason I moved it in closer. I took pics on some references I'm following, but I was just wondering any suggestions on how to do more with less in terms of getting this place feeling more trashy and lived in. So more trashy and lived in. So if we're focusing on the word trashy, right? I look at it in a way as like modularity, right? Hello, Slade. Thanks for being here. Have a nice week, man. Let's see. So trashy. You love that word for a specific reason. Because if we think about trash, right? Trash is very modular. So what I would do is just get like a bunch of junk slash trash, right? And I'm really thinking about like, you know, ordering like a couple of cups, cigarette butts, I don't know, anything that you can think of, like tiny little pieces that can then be used in like a modular way, right? Because if you have all of this stuff, then you can make them into piles. You can also set dress like the bar area, because now you have cigarette butts, so people are smoking at the bar and they leave their ashtrays, all that kind of stuff. And it's basically, yeah, we're building a set of things that we can keep reusing throughout the scene, right? Either for like piles, either for assets, debris, whatever we think about, right? So that could be a good way of just filling out the scene without having to do, well, getting more bang for your buck. That's what we're really into, right? So yeah, that's honestly, I know that I said like trashy in the beginning, but like it's basically just saying like, hey, I got this color. It's basically think modular, right? Everything that you make for a scene like this needs to basically be asked the same question. Can it be reused? Right? That is an important question to ask with anything that you do. Like the tarps like the metal that you're creating, like the beer bottles, like anything that you do. Like, okay, what if I take a beer bottle, I get it to like a fractured node or something like that. Now I have like shards of beer bottles, right? Okay, cool. Now I can combine the two again to make like a pile of like broken beer bottles and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's cool stuff that you can do once you start thinking in that way, because everything can just be like kit bashed and like merged and like done together somehow. And that's really important to get this scene done with minimal effort, right? The bar itself, that's for the second question. So the bar itself, I'm kind of sort of stuck on what to add for the bar area. I feel like it's missing that or a couple of things that can get it look like really interesting. I mean, honestly, look at bars, right? I know this sounds like such a stupid thing to say, but so we need more bar references, really. Because if there's one thing that's going to have a lot of diversity, it is going to be bars. So there must be something out there where you can be like, ooh, shit, that would be cool. Because I'm currently thinking about like the bar in Cyberpunk, right? Like very iconic, very high contrast, and they have like the weird kind of ceiling above like the main area, all that kind of stuff. Like I can envision it, right? But that is probably based or like inspired by like a real bar somewhere, you know, or like kind of kid bash from like ideas that came from somewhere else, right? So yeah, honestly, just look for more references. See if you can find something in those references that can make your bar stand out, right? Ideally, when I'm looking for those references, it needs to be, the only thing that I'll say is it needs to be in line with the world, right? What I mean by that is that if you're looking for something that's going to be trashy and cobbled together or like duct taped together or something like that, that's sort of the vibe that we seem to be going for, right? So the bar needs to be kind of in line with that thing as well. So that's what I would focus on. Yeah, watch out with some of these images though. Like I'm gonna say this is like another thing that I was looking at. This one works great. I think in terms of the lighting, that is good. So that's number 1, right? This is number 2, and this is number 3. I'll explain why. Very, very easy color palette to work with, because all the colors are like bluish, pinkish, right? This one, we're getting a little bit more complex because we're getting bluish, pinkish, greenish, orangey. This is getting more complex. Because there is some sort of separation. This one, honestly, is just all over the place. So watch out for scenes like this. You don't want your scene to end up like the same thing. I think, honestly, I'm really glad to see that you drastically scaled down all the different lights. And I think the way that you're going at this is really good. So yeah, I don't think you're running into any issues with that whatsoever. Just be careful with like what inspiration you use, because this looks like chaos. This one is sort of getting there, you know, it's still like a little bit chaotic. And then this one is just like, it's nice. There's still density, there's still clutter, but it's like nicely balanced and it's kind of easy on the eyes, right? Designers saying Ian Hubbard, Dynamo Dreams, are a good inspiration. Yeah, that's true. What I would do with that, I would look at the source of it. So whenever someone does something in 3D or 2D, whatever, it is already going to be a translation of their source material, right? So the best thing to do is always look for the original source inspiration of those people, because that is where the gold is, right? And then see what they're inspired by. Alejandro saying, yeah, that first one was rare for the main lighting. I just like the ideas from the other. Good note. I plan to keep it to 2 colors. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm also just saying this because I'll reveal a secret. Don't tell anyone though. Okay, I'm gonna put it on the screen in just a minute. I just need to go to it. Let's see. Here we go. Have a look at this scene. It is not chaotic in terms of like colors necessarily, but please avoid what I did for one of the challenges. Because this is just not readable. There's just no focal point. Like everything is just like chaos. Everything is turned up to the max. Like it is, yeah, it is really chaotic and unreadable. Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. It's very personal to me. Oh my god, this was also like almost 10 years ago. Jesus Christ. Cool. Yeah, thank you for posting your work, Alejandro. Great stuff though. Like I said, like the lighting where it is very simplified, but it is way better to start from a solid foundation and then build up than try to like dim it down, right? For a moment, I thought it was 2 images on top of each other. Yeah, thanks. That says enough, huh? My mouth is sealed. Yes. Don't tell anyone. Cool. Looking at my piece with PTSD. No. Cool. Thanks, Alejandro. Best of luck. Yeah, have fun with looking for bar stuff. I think you're gonna find some cool stuff there. There's so many creative bars in the world. That's gonna be no issue at all. Have fun. And looking forward to the next update. Right, we're jumping all over the place. Sam F. I don't think I've seen you here before, Sam. Oh, that's like a 1-year badge though. Okay. Currently working on the first project after creating the last 2 within a mentorship context. Okay. Oh, it's Drunken Noodle. Okay. I've kind of done now. Oh, with the mentorships or with this project already? Not sure. I'm going to Florida next week, and some bars going to be funny enough talking about real world ref. Yeah, get some context. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, thanks for being here, Long Pig. Have a nice night. Let's see. Next is to push this forward with better meshes, materials, and covering. Sorry, I should have read before saying that it was already done. I'm looking for feedback on a few things though. Before I go too far, the overall shape and the scale of the scene, right? Must have been a member for a while, but I haven't posted. No, it's all good. It's all good. I feel like we have a lot of lurkers in the chat, which I hope that they're still getting a lot of value, regardless of if they want to be active or not. I do get it. So first question. So much for your feedback, Tim. No worries. Happy to help. Even though on that one, I feel like it wasn't that particularly useful. Anything character related, and I shudder. So yeah, overall shape and the scale of the scene. How does the space feel? I think there might be too much space, but usually when I think that, it tends to add more noise that doesn't need to be there. Wait, I am missing a cool screenshot. Why did I not add that one? Hold on, let me get this guy in here. Yeah, this one looks cool. Way cooler than the black and white one. It's awesome. Let's see. Okay. So, yeah. So you think that there might be too much space, but usually when I think this, it tends to add a lot more noise. The cool thing about these kind of spaces, right? These kind of like very ornamental church-like, I can't really think about like a better word to describe it, but they serve a purpose, right? They're serving the purpose of being like a shrine to whatever, right? So a shrine to the heroes of whatever the city is, right? So this, we could see this as like yeah, medieval Gothic tomb is what it's called, but it could be like, yeah, a funeral tomb, like a mausoleum, something like that. First of all, I don't think the space is actually too big. I think it's actually pretty nice. What does help, and this is more up to you, right? You can emphasize like the size of the space by reducing the width even without adjusting the height. So let's say we were to condense this here, and then we have like this space, then the space is going to feel taller than it actually is, even though we didn't change the height, right? So that's like a way to like really play with someone's senses. And that's what churches are really good at, right? Like they sell this space of like grandeur, and I mean they're laid in a way that they like mostly form a cross and all that kind of stuff, right? So a very symbolical place. But I don't think it's too open. You can definitely do some more stuff with like the importance of certain elements, right? So for example, if we have these guys, maybe putting them on like a plinth, and then like having something in front of it, right? So that this is a tomb to the fallen soldiers. And what that does is we're really trying to sell this as a place of like all remembrance, right? So this was like the king of the sword. Ta-da! He has a giant sword. And this could be like the king of the axe. So it's the same guy, but like in this case, he has like an axe, and this guy has like a shield or something like that, right? We kind of want to increase like the importance of those people and like literally put them on a pedestal, right? You can do a lot of stuff with just like simple textures as well, though. So for example, if we try, we can build in some like interesting leading lines into the environment, where the central corridor is going to be different than like the side corridor, right? So for example, we have our main trim, which could be the same thing as here, and then we have like a trim that separates area 1 from area 2, and then this could be like a different kind of pattern, right? And that is going to reinforce like the whole idea of just like pushing you into the space, right? So just throwing like a bunch of ideas in to kind of, we're not necessarily going to fill up the space with new assets and more stuff, you know, but we're going to use the space that we already have and just like do a couple of tweaks to very subtly like make it feel like it's more cluttered, even though we're not doing a lot there. Because yeah, honestly, like when I talk about like, oh, we need to have like one texture here and then another texture here, it could literally be the same texture, just a slightly different color, and that's it, you know? And then we can separate the two areas out. So that could be cool. Separate those two out. And then once we have those areas, what we can then do, once we have those cobblestones, cobblestones probably not the right way of approaching this. Once we got those different assets, right, we can then start pulling that into all of the spaces. So for example, where we have this staircase, right? Maybe we want to do something cool with that pattern. So if we want to say follow the staircase, I don't know. You can do something like really interesting, but just having like. So this is like, again, this is our trim that just goes from like left to right. And then maybe, let's see, because we have like a pedestal here, right? Let's imagine that this is like a pedestal. And then this is going to be like a little section that is going to be, I'm trying to merge it with like the pattern of the floor, right? So, all right. And then for all this stuff, there's so much that you can do with floors. Like, oh my God, I love doing all this stuff. Right, and then we can do the same thing here as well. So we add just like a little trim. And then we can do the same thing here. Like a little separation of the space again. You get the idea, right? But like we can do so much with separating those little areas out, and then maybe there's like a different trim here that kind of leads you into this space. Yeah, that can be really, really powerful because, yeah, with all the compositions that you already have, it's going to work in conjunction with them, right? Oh yeah, trims are great. I have really, really a lot of fun using them. Yeah, trims are so powerful. So yeah. So what did we talk about? So first we had the importance. It's basically the symbolism, right? Oh my God. Symbolism. Basically these statues, right? Because we want to emphasize that this is like a tomb or like a very important place, and then we're literally putting like stuff on plinths and like on pedestals and stuff. To increase their importance compared to the people that are just going to be walking on the floor, right? And then just playing around with like floor patterns. Swear to God, with like environments like this, I can't stop myself by just like sharing a bunch of stuff that I would do. Oh my God. Let's see. And we talked about one question. So question number 2. Initial lighting pass. Just wondering how the current lighting feels in terms of its intensity and mixture of warm and cools. Initially, I do like it. I feel that the warms are a little bit too strong in terms of the cools, right? Because also if we think about like how we relate color to emotion, right? It is probably going to be more interesting to go a little bit more on bluish tones because we're dealing with a burial, right? And kind of put that a bit more to the forefront and reduce some of these like candle lights just a little bit. What that is also going to do at the same time is it's going to push the attention more down the corridor, which is what we want, right? I think you've laid a fantastic base. I think would do not want to. Right. Okay. We'll just do this then. Did I duplicate it? I did not. I want to do before and after. So let's do a little bit of this. Let's slap in some of this stuff as well. And then we'll do like a before and after in just a minute. Highlights. I want midtones, please. Might as well go full opacity. Because otherwise we're going to be here for a while. Right. And I think you can introduce like certain spots where you have like, yeah, like a brazier or something like that, right? Like on the sides that like lights up like a small area. Or even these guys, right? Like you can still keep them at like a small radius. Or maybe even, yeah, put like fires in front of plinths, like little candle lights. So for example, on these plinths, you could have like a couple of candles like at the bottom of it. That could be like your light source, right? That could be interesting. But yeah, the before and after. Let's see. Oh, it's all over the place. Like it allows you to shift your perspective, right? Like if we want to put more focus on the background, that's a way to do it. And then potentially, what could be nice to play around with is potentially keeping the front of it like more bluish, and then the back of it maybe a little bit more bright, so that it's like, yeah, we mourn the passing of like a person potentially, right? But there's still hope at the end of the tunnel, you know? Yeah. Cool. Just me scribbling only on the right, not on the left. Yeah. Vertex Mode is asking, this is cool. What app are you using for the images in the paint over? So the images are not made by me, you know, like they're made by our lovely community members. Like Sam is one of them. And I'm doing the overpaint in Affinity. So I use Affinity Photo for all of these, which is great. Fantastic. Thanks, Tim. No worries. As someone who is a lurker mainly, can confirm there's a lot of value gained. Oh, that's awesome. We should... I've been thinking about this for a bit. Like, we should throw out like a big questionnaire so that we can see where we can improve as a community. Because it's been a while since we've done one of those. Be good. Thanks, Tim. I would narrow down my question. I don't have experience working in games, which is a reason for joining this community to learn environment art pipeline to break it down into games. Yeah, love to have you. All right, 2 more for today. We are definitely over time. Oh, well, a couple of questions here. So, if this is too broad for one post, I'm happy to focus on a single question. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look. So first one is asset creation. So far, I've only made a temple and the red lights next to it. How many additional assets should I create for the scene to feel fully mine and showcase my skills? I'd like to focus on sculpting and texturing rather than foliage for this piece. Well, I think the answer to the question actually lies into what you just said, right? Like if you want to focus on sculpting, right? So if your focus is sculpting, let's see, sculpting and texturing, completely fine. Then it's also completely fine to just decide like, hey, look, all the trees and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to do it. I'm just purely going to focus on whatever I need to do to make my focal point stand out, which is this thing, right? I'm going to even care less about the sides of it or like some of the additional things here and there. I might honestly just make it more about a shrine in the middle of the forest or something like that, right? I am looking at it through a vision of like, what is the smallest possible scene that I can make that really aligns with the skills that I wanna hone. And what I'm thinking is literally this kind of shot, you know, you have like a forest path that kind of leads you up here. The rest of it is going to be freaking bamboo forest or something like that. Basically, so that we're not going to see any of it. And then you can just focus on a singular building. Like Metal Gear saying, the central shrine should be enough for focusing on sculpting. 100%. Sometimes what you have to do is just focusing on like a single thing. There is some context, so it is a game. It's set in a small poor town secretly exploited by the wealth of Cyberpunk City. The townspeople work tirelessly to send resources to the city, aware of its existence, blah blah blah. This location is also a boss room. The twist is that the boss character is actually villain. The boss is a clever villager who discovered the truth. Okay. I still think that we can really simplify it just to like this shrine, or like even just condense it to the arena. Because if this is like a boss fighting arena, right? I would again just like simplify this whole area, make it feel like more of an arena. And then the temple is more like, hey, this is where the boss comes out to like beat you up, you know? And then the rest of it again, like we're just moving stuff about, but like the forest can basically be in here. Right? And it's going to be blocking all this stuff. And then do the same thing here as well, right? Like, this is all just going to be forest. You can kind of use like the canopy of the forest with like some nice fog sheets and all that kind of stuff to like draw you in to the temple, right? Then you could still use like these guys to like force you to be like in the arena. Like really just like, yeah, block everything off with like foliage. So that, because what it basically comes down to is I don't want you to be worried about all the background because it's totally unnecessary to the scene. I would honestly play more with like layers of foliage and then just like separation between like different like sections of fog, right? Like really sell the idea that this is like a village with like a boss arena, basically into it. Yeah. But then when it comes to doing the foliage yourself, you don't need to. If your focus is on sculpting and texturing, like all of that foliage is mega scans, you know? That's completely fine. But yeah, that allows you to focus on the things that you actually need to focus on and want to focus on, rather than having to do a bunch of stuff that you just don't want to do. And it allows you to focus, because this is also a common thing that we do in games, right? Like we spend a lot of our resources on the things that really matter to the game, right? If there's a building far in the distance in the back that barely anyone is going to notice, we're not going to put a whole bunch of time in it. Doesn't make sense. Right? So we try to condense the area that we need to take care of so that we can put more of our time on the actual stuff that matters, right? Which is like the little temple, the surroundings, like giving it the appeal that it's bigger than just like a little temple. It's supposed to be a town. Yeah, we can sell that by not having to go as big as we're going. Cool. Second question, storytelling in environments. I know environmental storytelling is one of those most important skills in this field. I often feel lost trying to execute it. Any advice on how to visually convey the backstory in the atmosphere and scenes like this? There's a lot of complexity in the little story that you told me that is not going to work out. For example, you're being exploited by a wealthy cyberpunk city. That's going to be really difficult to having to drive that visually. We can go with like, hey, it's poor, it's not well maintained, and like everything is kind of falling apart, right? We could try to sell that. That could be interesting. But then how we do that is by really, if this is the focal point, like basically how do we make this how do we make this like not well maintained, right? If that is to the story of like, hey, they're draining all our resources, we need to visually show that like this area is poor. So look into references. How do people in very traditional rural areas, like how do they maintain their houses, right? Most of their houses are like very strongly built, but there must be cases where you can still see that people just fail to maintain them and that they're kind of just like falling apart a little bit. How do we translate that into this scene where it kind of makes sense, right? And then yeah, with the rest of it, I think it is more important to focus on gameplay first. So make sure that the boss arena works before we then start adding like a bunch of stuff for like visual storytelling purpose, right? Because if we look at the arena now, these things that you added to the arena, right? If this is like a fighting arena, this stuff all creates issues for gameplay. Because it just gets in the way, right? Like people can bump into it, blah, 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 blah. So it's basically, it's better to kind of keep, if we're looking at it from top down, right? So you have your temple here. You have like your little staircase, and then we have like the boss arena, right? You kind of give it like an interesting shape so that's not just a circle. But then we can say like, okay, this is the gameplay area. Nice. What do I do outside of the gameplay area to kind of make it feel like this place has been forgotten or like neglected, right? What you really need to look into at that point is how can you the resources that you're putting into the main building here, we want to build them in the way that they can be reused between other sections of this area too. So let's say that building, if we don't make it red and we just make it bare wood and we just break it all down, can that serve the purpose of just looking like a shitty old house, right? Because then we can start reusing some of those like sections as like, hey, look, people are still living here, but they live kind of in like a crazy like self-built like shanty town, you know? And that is surrounding the boss arena, which is still like, this is where we're going to be fighting, right? So this is where the focus should be. But at least we're trying to tie it all together, right? So that would be a thing to investigate. And it's just, it becomes about like reusability, modularity, and how to do more with less, right? And also a tiny thing, keep your scale in mind. These guys are not that tall in real life, especially compared to like a massive gong. So keep those scale and proportions in mind. Cool. Let's see. Composition and shots. When capturing shots, should I stay closer to established composition rules like rule of thirds, or is it fine to go with simply what looks appealing to me? What simply looks appealing to you might not look appealing to a lot of other people, right? So what you need to do with, oh, this looks appealing to me, is you need to distill why it looks like that and see what kind of framework you can kind of build around it, right? Because, oh, this looks good to me. This is something that we talked about earlier, right? Like if you don't have a strongly developed like artistic eye, it is really hard to determine what is good and what is bad, right? Because what you think is good, you might show that to your teammates and they might be like, ooh, the hell? What is this? Right? So that's where you can lean into the benefit of having multiple people to work with. And you can kind of like co-op that process, right? Yeah. That's about it for this one, Kazuki. I think honestly, this kind of stuff is going to be really helpful. So yeah, talk about it with your teammates because yeah, this is, I think that is a step you need to do for gameplay purposes, for your own purposes, for like getting a cool space for the team. Like, yeah, I think taking care of that first would be good. So yeah, best of luck with it. Thank you, designer, for joining in. And yeah, no worries. Thanks for being here as well. Have a good night. Right, and the last one for today, we got No One Austin. No One Austin is having trouble figuring out ceiling lights, adding pipes and cables, and final color palette. All right. So let's have a look. So in general terms, right? If we're going to keep it a high level, if you're saying I have trouble figuring out X, that means research and references. That's what that translates to. Of course, we're on a spaceship. So where the hell do I look for references for lights, right? Well, we can start by looking at if this is going to be, what I would focus on is the intent of the ship, right? So if this is going to be like a cargo hauler, for example, look at like the biggest ship that you can find, or like the biggest transport carrier. I think it's not a C-130. There's like a big transport plane that basically can transport like other planes in it, right? So look at those like relevant real life things and see what you can find and how they light up their spaces, right? The back of cargo planes would be perfect for this kind of stuff. So like cargo planes, massive shipping containers, or like container ships. We need to get a better understanding of how those spaces work, right? Also thinking about the logic of it. So I tend to think about like things very logically. What I mean by that is, okay, so let's say I have a door here. How am I going to open that door? Well, let's say there's like a little panel here. Right? Cool. What do I need to see from this space? If I press this button, I want to see what's going in or what's going out, right? So that means that there's probably going to be like an overhead light that is at least going to be covering like an area like in front of it. And that's what I want to see, right? Cool. What is the purpose of light in the bigger space then? We want to, if the function is to light up the whole space, it is probably not going to be on the sides. It is probably going to be central, right? We have like big, massive overhead lights that can just light up the whole space, right? And it's like logical or very function driven, especially for a cargo ship, which is basically all just going to be function and there's going to be no dressing up, right? So think about it in those ways. The same can be applied to like cables as well. We don't want to add like cables randomly. We want to think about like where the cables go and where they come from, right? So you have some like potentially like some ventilation shafts or something like that happening, right? Because we also need to keep a place like this relatively stable in terms of temperature to protect the cargo or something like that, right? So what is that going to look like then? So you potentially have like these like big like AC vents at the top of it that are going to be connecting with like some sort of like pipe system on the sides, and then we can kind of make it so that the pipe system kind of just goes to the floor or something like that, right? But this is me just coming up with things for the fly. So it is important that you do the research on this, because this might not be accurate even. But look at, think about like what the space logically needs, and then how we can construct those things into the space. So it is like, okay, think about the cargo, right? Like think about what we're storing here. Think about what the needs are. Temperature control, gravity control, if this is a spaceship, like all those kind of things, right? So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I know that was like a really high level again, but yeah, this sort of stuff can really help. Like thinking about the logic and like how a space is built in real life, and like how we can take all those components and do a sci-fi version of those things. Because I mean, like if we do like a quick lookup, right? Like the reason why I'm saying AC is because we have AC in our studio, right? So, um, oh god, and the thing that I like about it is that you got these types of ACs, right? And this is where it gets fun. So remember when I was talking about like, oh, these spaces, they're function first. So you can say that like, okay, this one looks quite nice, right? So this is a combination of, this is going for good looks, but also function, right? Where in some other companies, you just have like these kind of ACs, right? And this is a comparison between this one is design first, and this one is pure function, right? And this is where it gets cool. Like if you in your case, if you want to do a spaceship, the function of that spaceship is gonna basically decide like if it's gonna be this one or if it's gonna be this one. If it's a cargo hauler, you betcha that they're not gonna spend extra money making it pretty. However, if it's like let's say like a yacht or something like that, right? You betcha that they're gonna spend extra money on making it pretty, right? So there's yeah. There's an old adage, form follows function. That can be useful. So think about that. Think about the components that make up like your everyday like cruiser, right? Like I'm talking about like your travel cruiser, like where you go travel, not a cruiser, a cruise. That's a better way of saying it. And think about like all the amenities that they have, and then how you can translate that to like a flying ship, right? So yeah, I hope that was helpful. All right, was it for the evening. One last question to round it off. Metal Gear was also saying this is giving me like Alien Earth vibes. I don't think I've heard about that. I read that as like Alien Isolation for some reason. Nicole B is asking a question. So I've seen things scale to large proportions in games like Wukong, where they are way larger than in real life, but it looks cool in the game. Are there exceptions when it comes to scaling? So there is basically, it depends on the art direction, right? Because if you look at games like Elden Ring, for example, that massive tree that's in the background, like that's not a normal tree. But it's also, it looks fucking awesome. So that is like what we're gonna do now. So it all depends on the art direction, right? Like some games have like very exaggerated proportions and they go really big with something and really just put an emphasis on like bright colors, all that kind of stuff. Compared to other games that might be more realistic in their tone, right? So it all just kind of depends on the art direction of the game. But yeah, some game engines even, well, some internal game engines, they don't even allow you to scale just for consistency between assets, whereas some others do. I've worked with both of those situations where, yeah, I didn't even have the option to scale assets, even if I wanted to, on some of the games that I worked on. All right, people, we're way over time, so I'm gonna call it here. Thank you all so much for being here. Really had a lovely chat. I really enjoyed our chat in the beginning. Like, honestly, I should do that as like a separate format and just like chat the entire night. That would be awesome. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Thanks for participating in the Whip Wednesday. If you want to join yourself, you know where to click now. There's a link down in the description. Also, even if you don't want to become a member, there's a bunch of cool resources that are free on our YouTube and then also just to read on our website too. So go check them all out. Yeah, and have fun growing as an artist. And I will speak to you not next week because the Gamescom, but the week after. I'll be back. I'll see you then. Bye, everyone.